Chapter 2016. It was not that Mado Wusu wanted to destroy her own prestige and boost other people's morale. The SSS class ghoul was extremely ferocious. It was too easy to crush a ghoul investigator. For example, the highest level special investigator wanted to defeat the SSS class ghoul. Of course, there were only a few ghoul investigators who were similar to Arima Kisho. But then again, this SSS class ghoul let us go. Is his head broken by the door? Mado Wusu supported Amataro to leave. He was even ready to die, but the strange thing was that Dustless did not chase them. Who knows, are all ghouls so kind now? Amataro murmured in confusion, full of puzzlement. Hey, that kid will regret it. Mado Wusu's cheeks were distorted. He did not have the slightest sense of joy after the disaster. All that was left was endless hatred and disgust. Hatred was the pillar of Mado Wusu's life. Especially the sentence Dustless just said, it deeply hurt his self-esteem. I don't like to bully the weak. This sentence was obviously looking down on them. That guy is really courageous. CCG is worried that there is no suitable code name for him. This guy dares to take the initiative to tell his name to us. Amataro, do you think this kid is looking down on us, or is he too confident? Mado Wusu supported Amon Guntaro and always felt that this was a great humiliation. Yes, he will regret it. Kotaro Shimon's face was also full of anger. Today was definitely the most sullen day in his life. He was beaten up by Wuchen. He was almost killed in a face-to-face encounter. Now, he even needed Mado Wusu's help to go back. He had lost all his face. Are you crazy? On the other side, Mado Wusu and Amataro just left. Kirishima Tuka looked at Dustless angrily, and her words were full of anger. You even let the white dove go? Do you know how many ghouls will be killed by such behavior? Her beautiful eyes widened. Kirishima Tuka looked at Dustless and pouted her lips. Of course, if he remembered her ferocious ghoul identity, he wouldn't think she was cute at all. In any case, although there were good and bad ghouls, their nature of eating humans had not changed. Miss Kirishima, you may be mistaken about one thing. Dustless glanced at Kirishima Tuka faintly, and said softly, I have a cooperative relationship with your store manager, Yoshimura Kozen. Are you using this tone to talk to me? Are you ordering me? As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding space suddenly became much colder. Noticing that the surrounding air had become cold, Kirishima Tuka's face changed greatly. She subconsciously looked down and was shocked to find that the ground under her feet was covered with a layer of crystal-clear ice. Have you figured out your position now? You are not qualified to order me, including Yoshimura Kozen. Remember, he asked me to join the antique coffee shop, not because I am willing to or find a reason to join. Dustless said very indifferently, and suddenly realized that he had chosen the wrong camp. A serious human being mixing with a group of ghouls all day long, isn't this a brain disease? He was not a monster like Kaneki-ken. He was both a human and a ghoul. Eating humans was a necessary behavior. Every time he saw the group of ghouls eating humans, even with Dustless's nature, he felt a chill. Ghouls were really heavy creatures. No wonder CCG and ordinary people hated this group so much. Think about it, after your family dies and is eaten by ghouls, how will you feel? Let's go. Gently glancing at Kirishima Tuka, who was sluggish, Dustless immediately left, free and natural. Damn guy. Feeling angry, Kirishima Tuka finally chased Dustless's figure. Even if she was dissatisfied, there was no way. With the strength of Kirishima Tuka, the chance of defeating Amon Kotaro and Mado Wusu was very small. If Dustless refused to fight, Kirishima Tuka had no way to balance the two of them. Little girl, you overestimate yourself. You still want to order me around? Aren't you overestimating yourself? Seeing Kirishima Tuka's mouth pouting, Dustless smiled and said nothing. She wanted to control him. This little girl was still thousands of miles away. She was too arrogant. Tuka, I just heard the two white pigeons call him an SSS class ghoul. Flute Ryoko's face was shocked. Although fighting was not her strength, she naturally knew what an SSS class ghoul meant. An SSS class ghoul definitely belonged to the king of ghouls. Dustless's strength has indeed reached the SSS class, but what kind of species is he? I still don't understand at present. Kirishima Tuka's face was strange and speechless. So far, not only her, but everyone, including the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, could not figure out what kind of species Dustless belonged to. They said that this guy was a human, but his strength was extraordinary. Everyone also mistakenly thought that Dustless's Sharingan was a mutated Kaku-ai. Most people thought that Dustless was an out-and-out ghoul. But the strange thing was that as a ghoul, Dustless had never eaten human flesh. Dustless had no interest in this aspect, he preferred human food. As for when he saw human flesh, Dustless could not help but vomit. He could also understand why some humans, such as Mado Wusu, hated ghouls so much. SSS class ghoul. Flute Ryoko trembled, the shock on her face was difficult to hide, looking at Dustless's back. For her, this guy was like a god. Chapter 2017. Inside the antique coffee shop. Dustless and Kirishima Tuka brought back Deko Ryoko, as well as Deko Hataki and her daughter so quickly, which really surprised everyone. Of course, the store manager who knew that Dustless had the strength of an SSS class ghoul was no exception. Even if he encountered a special investigator, as long as it was not a Rima Kisho, it would be a one-sided victory. Manager Yoshimura, thank you for your care. Deko Ryoko bowed 90 degrees to Yoshimura Kozen and thanked him excitedly. Instead of thanking me, it's better to thank Dustless and Tuka, they are the ones who did it. Yoshimura Kozen just smiled slightly, and then said, the essence of the antique coffee shop is to help ghouls. If you have any trouble, you can say it directly. To be honest, I do have a big thing that I need your help with. Deko Ryoko said bitterly. You don't want to? Dustless looked at Deko Ryoko thoughtfully and asked, you don't expect us to save your husband, do you? Such a ridiculous idea should not be taken seriously. Ridiculous? I don't think it's ridiculous. Kirishima Tuka stood up and said with approval, as long as you and the store manager work together, it is not a big problem to defeat the CCG in the 20th district. Hey, you're right. After hearing this, Dustless agreed with Kirishima Tuka's point of view, and immediately looked at Yoshimura Kozen with expectation, and asked with interest, so, are you interested? Manager Yoshimura. In fact, even if the manager closed his mouth and did not answer, Dustless also guessed his answer. Why did this old man painstakingly maintain the peace of the 20th district? He hoped that the ghouls and the white pigeons of CCG would get along well. How could he destroy CCG now? I refuse. Sure enough, as Dustless guessed, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen unexpectedly refused. If I didn't guess wrong, your husband may have been caught by CCG. I am afraid that they have already arranged an inescapable net, waiting for us to walk into the net. The closed magma eyes opened slightly, revealing the dark red eyes. The store manager continued. Moreover, even if we are lucky enough to destroy the white pigeons in the 20th district, there are a large number of white pigeons from other special zones to support us until we are completely destroyed. After so many years of dealing with the people of CCG, the store manager maintained the current balance until CCG. If some forces tried to break the current balance, they would inevitably suffer CCG's crazy revenge. Really, in any case, it is impossible for ghouls and humans can live peacefully. Dustless shook his head. Sometimes, he really felt that the store manager's head was made of wood. If ghouls want to live, they must eat human flesh. Therefore, this is also destined to be a world of life and death between ghouls and humans. If they want to live together, it is tantamount to a dream. Hunger is hell for ghouls, no one can bear it, and human flesh is heaven for ghouls. Whether to choose hell or heaven, anyone with a little brain will make the right answer. Therefore, from the beginning, the store manager's starting point was wrong. In any case, ghouls and humans can't coexist, and one of the two sides must be completely eradicated. Right. A flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in his mind. Dustless looked at Kaneki Ken and said excitedly, since Kaneki can also be transformed from a human to a ghoul, why can't ghouls be transformed into humans? Since the combination of ghouls and humans can give birth to one-eyed ghouls, although the probability is small, It also shows that the body structure of the two has the same thing. Isn't Kaneki-ken a veritable example? From a human to a ghoul, but there is no rule that ghouls can't become humans. Boom boom boom. At this time, the tightly closed shop door was suddenly opened, and a handsome man with a strange appearance rushed out of the door, like a flower, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Yo! The person who came looked familiar at first glance. He took the lead to say hello, and immediately made a very exquisite etiquette. It looked like a top aristocrat who was born in some powerful family, and his whole body was full of nobility. Jukiyama-shi? It's a rare guest. After staring at the blue-haired man for a while, Dustless glanced at the identity of the person who came. This guy was a real S-class ghoul, and he also had an elegant title of gourmet. However, this guy's temperament looked elegant and calm, and his behavior was unattainable, but in fact, he was also a ferocious ghoul, and he had a unique nickname, Gourmet, which was enough to see Jukiyama-shi's pickiness of humans. Jukiyama, you are not welcome here. Kirishima Tuka seemed to have eaten gunpowder, and her face was indifferent and disgusted. Hey, if I remember correctly, you are a coffee shop here. Is this how you greet guests? Store manager. Jukiyama-shi smiled at Kirishima Tuka's threat, and even his eyebrows did not blink. It seemed that he did not put this little girl in his eyes at all. Hey, I got it. Seeing Jukiyama-shi sitting down, Dustless suddenly shouted. Kaneki, there is a guest, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and pour coffee for Master Jukiyama. Wu-chan quietly swept behind Kaneki-ken and unceremoniously kicked his family. Kaneki, you brat, why are you still being reserved for me? Hurry up and step on the mine for me. Damn it. Being kicked by Dustless, Kaneki-ken just stared at him gloomily. When he was about to cut tea for Jukiyama-shi, he suddenly felt cold eyes around him. You are Kaneki-ken? The taste seems to be different from others. Chapter 2018. Does this guy want him to eat me? Kaneki-ken screamed in his heart, seeing Dustless gloating. He was full of hatred towards him. This bastard was obviously deliberately trapping him. He did not offend him but still hurt him. There must be an unknown premeditated plan. Ghouls were very sensitive to the smell of human beings. Just like humans smelling delicious food, they could not help but eat. All these were subconscious instinctive reactions. Gulu. As Dustless guessed, Jukiyama-shi's mouth was dry. His eyes radiated the light of the wolf. His cheeks were almost crazy looking at Kaneki-ken. There was an indescribable desire. Everyone in the antique coffee shop, seeing this scene, all frowned. Dustless was obviously deliberately trapping Kaneki-ken. Although he exuded a unique smell, everyone could smell it, but Dustless deliberately kicked Kaneki-ken, obviously deliberately trapping Kaneki-ken. Let Jukiyama-shi notice this delicious eye. His taste is pretty good. Dustless laughed with bad intentions. His mouth showed a bright smile. It was full of endless banter. You bastard, don't talk nonsense, I am not delicious. Kaneki-ken, who was desperate, quickly pointed to Dustless. His face showed clear fear. Being stared at by Jukiyama-shi's greedy eyes, his body could not help but tremble. Manager Yoshimura. Jukiyama-shi smiled faintly, looking at Dustless. His brows immediately frowned. He always felt that this guy was a bit familiar, but there was no memory of this guy in his impression. What's the matter? Yoshimura asked plainly. Why don't you give me a price? How about selling these two guys to me? Staring at Wu-chen and Kaneki-ken, Yusenshi was so excited that he almost danced with joy. His eyeballs were so excited that they almost popped out. Such a wonderful food material. Who are you saying is food material? A cold voice suddenly sounded. Dustless looked at Jukiyama-shi with no expression. The dead eyes were like an abyss. The depth could not be seen. Although everyone's time together was still short, people like the manager Yoshimura and Kirishima Tuka, who were barely familiar with Dustless, knew that this guy was on the verge of exploding at this moment. Haha. As for Jukiyama-shi, he still had an ignorant, elegant chuckle. He looked very gentlemanly. He did not know that he had been targeted by a real hungry wolf. Let Dustless teach this so-called gourmet a lesson. Seeing such a scene, the store manager was silent and did not express any opinions. He had always advocated that ghouls should live in harmony with each other, but Jukiyama she had a nickname of gourmet. Not only did he treat humans as delicious food, but he also did not let go of ghouls. Therefore, borrowing Dustless's hands to let him recognize himself, this might not be a bad thing. Do you know what kind of person is the stupidest person in the world? Glancing at Jukiyama she, Dustless took a sip of coffee and asked softly. Unconsciously, he had already liked coffee, which was bitter first and then sweet later. What do you mean? Jukiyama she frowned. He subconsciously thought that Dustless was scolding him indirectly. The stupidest person in the world seemed to be talking about himself. The god of death is standing in front of you, but you said to the god of death that your weapon is too blunt, you can't kill me. Don't you think this is ridiculous? Even that idiot sees the god of death as food, this kind of person. Is he so stupid that no medicine can save him? Dustless looked at Jukiyama she meaningfully. He almost said that the idiot was actually Jukiyama she. Hearing this, everyone in the antique coffee shop smiled and looked at Jukiyama she with a strange face. You asshole! Jukiyama she's face turned green. Dustless had already said so much. If he still didn't know that the idiot in Dustless's words was him, he should go buy a block of tofu and kill himself. So you think you are the god of death? You talk big. Do you know who I am? Jukiyama she suddenly stood up. He stared at Dustless with an unfriendly expression, his sinister face forming a cruel curve. He smiled evilly. If that's the case, how about this? Let's make a deal. The loser, whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, before Jukiyama she could finish his sentence, Dustless's body turned into a stream of light and evaporated. Where is he? Where is my food, asshole? Jukiyama she rubbed his eyes and cursed loudly. When he realized that Dustless's presence had disappeared, he held his head and slammed the table in pain. Damn it, where is my delicious food? Who allowed him to escape? This idiot. Kirishima Tuka was speechless. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at the crazy Jukiyama she. She had heard that he was crazy, and now she knew that it was true. Escape? There is no such word in my dictionary. A cold voice suddenly came from behind, and the Scarlet Sharingan confirmed that it was Dustless who had disappeared before. Haha, he didn't escape? Hearing this, Jukiyama she was stunned for a moment, then turned his head with ecstasy, but what he got in return was a merciless kick. Boom! The kick landed on Jukiyama she's abdomen. Jukiyama she's face suddenly changed, and he immediately screamed in pain. He was shocked to find that a casual kick made a big hole in his abdomen. Kakaka! Even the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Chapter 2019. Ao 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 Ao. Jukiyama she's hands covered his stomach, his cheeks were twisted violently, and he was in pain. I remember, this guy is the SSS class ghoul that was recently listed by CCG. Jukiyama she suddenly remembered Dustless's reflection. He wanted to slap himself. Jukiyama she, the Jukiyama family he belonged to, had a lot of connections in Tokyo. When Dustless became an SSS class ghoul, he got the exact news. But at that time, he just glanced at him casually. After all, he and Dustless had no intersection, and the two sides had no grievances. But as the saying goes, enemies are bound to meet. Jukiyama she did not expect to encounter Dustless at this moment. Oh no, this time I kicked an iron plate. Jukiyama she was sad. He suddenly provoked a character that he could not afford to provoke, and his heart was blocked. It's all because of this hateful boy. Looking at Kaneki Ken, Jukiyama she's eyes were full of hatred. If it were not for Kaneki Ken, he would not be so absurd to eat such a big person as food. Therefore, all the mistakes were on Kaneki Ken's head. You still have the mood to hate others? Seeing Jukiyama she wanted to eat Kaneki Ken alive. Dustless sneered, his right hand shook slightly, a large number of photons rushed out from his 5 fingers and turned into a hot light sword, Kusanagi no Kento. Kakaka. Seeing this, Jukiyama she also knew that a big battle was inevitable, and now he did not show weakness and released his Kagun, and his eyes became Scarlet Kagun. At the moment when he became a ghoul, Jukiyama she's body was full of raging and crazy aura. It looks like you still want to eat me. Dustless snorted, staring at the cocoon wrapped around Yukiyama-shi's right arm and muttered, "This seems to be Kaku. I remember that Kirishima Toka's cocoon seems to belong to Yukaku." Looking up, he saw a circle of spiral cocoon wrapped around Yukiyama-shi's right arm, and the front end became a big sword filled with cold light. There are many types of cocoon, such as Kirishima Toka's Yukaku, Kamishima Arisa's Maigaku, Nishio Brocade's Maigaku, and Tsukuyama Seiki's Maigaku, all of which have different characteristics. Jaku's defense was stronger, but its speed was slower. Yuha's explosive power was extremely strong, but his consumption was excessive. As for Kamishiro Rise's Rinkaku, she had strong regenerative abilities, high attack power, but weak defense. In short, all the different types of cocoon have their own merits. I want to see what's the difference between you and the SSS class ghoul. I haven't tasted the meat of the SSS class ghoul yet. The moment the voice just fell, Yukiyama-shi rushed to Dustless like a breeze. You overestimate yourself. The store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, shook his head and didn't even bother to look. Oeo. A strange scream came from the corner of his mouth. Then Yukiyama-shi's right arm, which was condensed from cocoon, chopped toward Dustless's head. Seeing this, Dustless did not move, quietly looking at Yukiyama-shi's attack. The corner of his mouth was swept with an imperceptible sneer. He did not avoid it. It was completely unnecessary. Puchi! The sharp cocoon sword cut through Dustless's body and ruthlessly cut his whole body. The upper body and the lower body were separated and fell to the side. Ha ha ha! Rampant laughter came out from Yukiyama-shi's mouth. He laughed triumphantly. What SSS class ghoul in front of me? It's just Puchi! Yukiyama-shi suddenly felt a sharp pain in his back. He turned his head and looked. His eyes almost exploded. Aren't you dead? Yukiyama-shi was shocked. He just cut Dustless into two. How did this bastard resurrect again? Moreover, Wu Chen's spirited appearance was obviously unscathed. You just slashed at the air, that's all. Warm flashes of light lingered around the compound wound, nourishing the gap in Dustless's body. In less than a few seconds, his whole body was completely restored to its original state, repaired by the elemental transformation ability of the glint fruit. It's my turn. Suddenly stepping on the ground, the floor exploded in an instant. Dustless's body broke out an amazing explosive nature power, and he rushed like thunder. My cocoon is the strongest cocoon in defense. I don't believe you have any means to tear him. Yukiyama-shi was not afraid. More dense cocoon broke out from his back and immediately wrapped his whole body, as if covered with a layer of indestructible armor. His limbs and bones were wrapped by cocoon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, the hot edge of Kusunagi's sword suddenly came, and there was a close contact between the two. Puchi. Cocoon, who Yukiyama-shi had high hopes for, was very fragile. It was pierced through by the edge of Kusunagi's sword, and even his body was hit by a fatal blow. The scorched knife scar looked a bit shocking, and even filled the air with the smell of rotten meat. Plop. The attack brought by the attack obviously damaged Yukiyama-shi's body. He fell to the ground like a lamp without oil. The wound on his abdomen made him grimace in pain. You want to stop me with this kind of plaything? Glancing at the remains of cocoon on Yukiyama-shi's body, Dustless stepped on his head and couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. These days, children's thoughts are so rich and ridiculous. You want to use a piece of paper to stop a shiny knife. Yukiyama-shi, if your teacher knew your behavior, he would probably be angry. In Dustless's eyes, was there any difference between cocoon's defense and a piece of paper? Damn it. Yukiyama-shi was angered by Dustless. His body wanted to stand up, but he was powerless. The knife had already brought great damage to him. Even if he was not a ghoul, Yukiyama-shi would have died at this moment. Chapter 2020. Dustless calmly looked down at the stunned Yukiyama-shi, the corner of his mouth slightly raised, and a hint of mockery could be seen on his face. You find it hard to believe? Dustless looked directly into his confused eyes as he explained, Don't you think you're too childish? You always think you're special and that others are destined to be played by you? This kind of groundless confidence is really not flattering. Only after bullying people for a long time did Yukiyama-shi subconsciously think that he was unique, and thus his confidence grew. In reality, he was just an ordinary person among all living things. There were many people who could defeat Jukiyama Shi, such as the owner of the antique coffee shop, Yoshimura Kozai, but he didn't care about him. No matter how much trouble a child caused, adults would only treat it as a joke, and at most give him a slap as a warning. Get out of here. Dustless stopped looking at Jukiyama Shi. He had already lost all interest in this guy. You're not going to kill me? Although Dustless's look of contempt made him very uncomfortable, Jukiyama Shi was still very happy. If they could live, most people would choose to continue living. Why would I kill you? Dustless took a sip of the coffee, the mellow taste lingering in his mouth, and asked back, I don't have a reason to kill you. I'm your enemy. Jukiyama Shi lowered his voice and looked at Dustless. Enemy? Suddenly, a thick sense of sarcasm appeared on his calm face. Kid, don't be so full of yourself. Do you think you're qualified to be my enemy? Do you know the true meaning of the word enemy? Only those who can face me head-on are called enemies. Trash like you who can be killed in one move is just a simple mouse, the kind that can be trampled to death. Hearing this, Jukiyama Shi was mad and glared at Dustless. He dared not to say anything because what this guy said was an undeniable fact. An elephant with a huge body would never be bored enough to trample an ant to death just because it was bitten by an ant. The latter was too small, a small character not worth mentioning. The size of an ant was like a grain, and it would take a while to find it. Of course, the elephant would not bother with it, let alone care about its existence. The guy who brings shame to himself. Kirishima Toka also responded with a sympathetic look. Let's ask, an S-class school challenging an SSS class school, is it not bringing destruction to himself in the end? Let's wait and see. Yu Shan Shi glared at everyone, especially Wu Chen and Kaneki Ken. Wu Chen had crushed him, and Kaneki Ken had crushed him. Yu Shan Shi naturally held a grudge. Just after running a few steps and leaving the site of the antique coffee shop, Jukiyama Shi breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that his life was back. When he was under the same roof with Dustless, he always felt that his life was grasped in the hands of Dustless. If he blew a little bit harder, his soul would be gone. This feeling was really uncomfortable, especially Jukiyama Shi, who was used to being high in the mountain. He was severely destroyed by Dustless, almost leaving a serious psychological barrier. However, as soon as he left the antique coffee shop, an unexpected figure hiding in the aisle revealed a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. This is the SSS class school? I heard that he is called Dustless. His strength is good, but it is too strange. The girl's appearance was delicate, her delicate face was like a carved jade, and her pink lips made people can't help but want to go up and peck gently. This person was called Takatsuki-san, the leader of Ayajirai Tree, and also the daughter of the store manager. A day ago, she felt the 20th district, but Takatsuki-san was not in a hurry to contact Dustless, but chose to secretly observe the movements of Dustless. Is this guy really a ghoul? Why can't he fight at all, even Kagun Eyes and Kagun? Without exception, Takatsuki-san made the same question as others. The fighting method of ghouls was usually to use Kagun to duel, but Dustless seemed to be a bit strange. Whether it was the previous battle or the one-sided suppression just now, it seemed that he did not use Kagun as a weapon. I can join forces with her, maybe I can break the order of the world today. The girl's face outlined a charming dimple. Takatsuki-san was quite proud to touch her chin, her white fingers slid around, her watery eyes sometimes flashed a cunning charm. It was hard to imagine that he was the SSS class ghoul, the one-eyed king. That guy is. At the same time, Dustless in the antique coffee shop, his sight also moved slowly, and finally fell on the leaving figure. The messy and slender hair was very conspicuous. The real SSS class ghoul came to me. Suddenly remembering the identity of the person who came, Dustless suddenly became interested, and said to himself, this Yoshimura-gakusen is too kind, I was wrong to associate with this guy. Although he was an SSS class ghoul, Yoshimura-gakusen did not have the appearance of an SSS class ghoul, perhaps the false piece meant more to him. As for his daughter, Takatsuki-sen, she was an out-and-out butcher. It was absolutely impossible to be soft-hearted. Even the reason why antiques would be annihilated in the future was completely because Takatsuki-san deliberately sold the news to CCG. It had to be said that a daughter like Takatsuki-san was rare. However, this time, the way Dustless took was different from before. The reason why he cooperated with the manager was that he wanted to know more about the world. Although he had the memory of the previous life, some knowledge that he did not understand must be popularized by the manager to Dustless. But if the object was changed to the Aojirai tree, it was not necessary, he could directly suppress it. Chapter 2021. I still have something to do, I have to leave for a while. After Tsukuyama left, Dustless suddenly spoke, and immediately walked to the room where he usually slept. It seemed that he was going to pack his luggage. You want to leave? Yoshimura Gakushin frowned and asked. He was sure that he was going to go far. If he just went out for a walk or to relax, there was no need to pack his luggage. Yes. Dustless simply admitted, his eyes spread slightly, taking in everyone's gentle faces, and then said bluntly and indifferently, "This environment is not suitable for me." Do you think this peaceful life is annoying? Yoshimura Gakushin's rough cheeks were slightly tight, he looked quite nervous. The peace he created was torn by Dustless. They could only stand on the opposite side of each other. Who knows? His scarlet eyes flickered with nightmarish demonic light, just like a hungry wolf that chose a person to devour. A strange brilliant smile appeared on his dry mouth, and then Wu-chan walked to his room. This guy. The store manager Yoshimura Gakushin clenched his fist. At first, he drew Dustless to cooperate with him. The real purpose was that he hoped that Dustless could enjoy this rare peace, and in the future he would face crises and defend it. But now it seemed that it was just a dream, out of reach. How could a person who was keen on war enjoy peace? Mr. Tetsuya. Yoshimura Gyozan looked at the silver-haired man beside him, revealing a deep and frightening pair of eyes. He said in a heavy tone, "When Wu-chan leaves later, secretly follow him. If you discover that he has done something out of the ordinary, if you can kill him, try to kill him. If you can't, you can withdraw. Pay attention to safety." Tetsuya heard the words and nodded with no expression. Even if he knew that Dustless's strength had reached the SSS level, he was still willing to take risks. Really, how long has it been that Takatsuki-san ran away? In the dark, smelly alley, there was a foul smell everywhere. Human bones could be seen everywhere on the ground, and there were clear sounds of crying and howling. It was probably some hungry ghouls who were eating. The young man who looked very young, about 17 or 18 years old, was wandering in the alley. The person who looked around was Dustless, who was looking for the trace of Takatsuki. Senator Dustless's plan was quite simple. He took the identity of the boss of Aojirai Tree from Takatsuki. Senator. If she was willing to be a follower, then it was easy to talk. If she resisted, he could only beat her until she was convinced. There seems to be a rat following us. His eyes leisurely looked back, and then his observation hockey quietly spread, and all the movements within a few hundred meters appeared clearly under Dustless's eyes. So it's him. Dustless continued to move forward without batting an eyelid. He pretended that he didn't know anything, but the raging light in the depths of his eyes quietly floated. Dustless had already severed all ties with the antique coffee shop, but there were still rats following him. Naturally, Dustless would not be courteous. They chose their own path and no one forced them. Moreover, they had to pay the price for their mistakes. What was that feeling just now? Could it be a misconception? Staring at Dustless's back, Square Lotus Mark didn't know why, but in the end he found it difficult to chase after him. When Dustless suddenly turned his head, Four-Sided Lotus had a feeling that he had been seen through. All the weaknesses in his limbs and bones were exposed under that indifferent gaze. The huge pressure even made Four-Sided Lotus feel a suffocating sense of crisis. Continue to track, it must be an illusion just now. It is obviously an SSS class school. How can it have that kind of deadly oppressive feeling? After hesitating for a few seconds, Square Lotus Mark's eyes were bright, glowing with bright and firm light, and resolutely stepped forward. No matter what, he was also an SS class school. Even if he could not defeat an SSS class ghoul, he should not have that kind of illusion. Under the gaze of those black eyes, Tetsuya Rinshur only felt that he was as small as a lonely boat and vulnerable. What's more, Square Lotus Mark had fought with Arima Kisho when he was young. Although the final outcome was a fiasco, he still escaped from Arima Kisho's hands. Maybe this was the source of his confidence. Since he could escape from Arima Kisho's hands, why can't he escape from Dustless? He dared to go in alone and ignored my warning just now. Young people nowadays are bold and courageous, but their behavior is extremely stupid. Under the search of observation hockey, Dustless walked by feeling and quickly found a warehouse that had been abandoned for a long time. It was very dilapidated and estimated that it had been abandoned for a long time. It was not bad to make Square Lotus Mark's grave. At least after being killed, he would not be eaten by other ghouls. Damn it, where did that guy go? How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? The four-sided lotus, who had followed Wuchen, looked around. After searching for a long time, he still couldn't find any trace of Wuchen. Immediately, he revealed an anxious and exasperated expression. The person who was given to him by the store manager, Yoshimura Gyozen, was to try to kill Dustless or follow him. Now don't mention killing Dustless, now even the person was gone. How can he chase? His face inevitably showed an irritated color. Damn. Square Lotus Mark, who was angry, kicked the bottle at his feet to vent his anger. Whoosh! At the same time, the cold wind suddenly surged behind him, and the mysterious person with blood-red eyes suddenly appeared. Since you are so irritated, then I will reluctantly send you to hell. Chapter 2022. Who is it? Hearing this cold tone, Fujiwara quickly turned his head, and the scarlet three-tomo Sharingan appeared in his eyes, clearly indicating his identity. Buzz buzz buzz. Raising his head, he saw Dustless tightening his thumb. Dazzling light gathered and aimed at Lianshur's head. Swish! Swish! Sensing the danger, four-sided Lotus hurriedly dodged to the side to avoid the light attack. However, compared to the speed of light, the Square Lotus was still too slow. It could even be said that compared to the speed of light, the Square Lotus was as slow as a tortoise. Poochie! A straight beam of light shot towards Fong Lianshur, and a charred hole appeared on his body. It was obvious that he had been pierced through by the beam of light. Damn you! Fong Lianshur endured the pain and looked at the wound on his chest. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. If he hadn't moved his body slightly, his heart might have been pierced through at this moment. Ka. Since Dustless wanted his life, Square Lotus naturally would not back down. He decisively chose to return the favor. Swish! Swish! On the back, the slender Kagun shot out, and the surface was covered with thick and hard scales. It looked quite domineering. At the same time, the eyes of the Square Lotus also became the Kagun eyes that belonged to the ghouls. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He danced with all his might, and the long and narrow Kagun swept out from the left like a long whip. Umph! Seeing this, Dustless coldly laughed and completely ignored the incoming attack. He didn't even look at it. Armament hockey hardening. His limbs and bones were instantly covered with black skin, emitting an indestructible, dazzling light. Bang! The slender Kagun hit Dustless's body. If it were an ordinary person, the thick scales covering the Kagun could easily tear a person's skin apart. However, the scene that happened to Dustless made Square Lotus's jaw drop. Ka. The moment he hit Dustless, his flesh and blood didn't separate as he imagined. Instead, his Kagun couldn't withstand Dustless's hard body. The moment he hit Dustless, his Kagun dismembered itself. Ka. The seemingly solid Kagun collapsed like glass. How is this possible? This explosive scene almost blew Fong Lianshur's eyes out. He stared at the calm Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. His heart was instantly filled with a storm. The hardness of this guy's body has reached an unprecedented level, and the body of a ghoul is so hard? Even if it was an SSS class ghoul, it would never be able to do this. Tetsuya Tensei used all his strength to attack Dustless, but sadly, the first thing to collapse was his Kagun. On the other hand, Dustless was completely fine. This kind of vulgar joke was not funny at all. You are stunned. With a disdainful snort, Dustless looked at Tetsuya Tensei's body, and his strange eyes turned. Buzz buzz buzz. The scarlet pentagonal eternal Mangekyo Sharingan seemed to be screaming, making an unknown and terrible movement. Dustless's eyes focused on Tetsuya Tensei's body, and the place that was stared at by Dustless suddenly had an unexpected change. Amaterasu. With Dustless's order, the scarlet eternal Mangekyo Sharingan rotated, and Tetsuya Tensei's body burned with a black, unknown evil light in the blink of an eye. Bastard, what is this situation? When did I get burned? The burning pain swept all over his body like a tide. Tetsuya Tensei's cheeks were full of fear, and he frantically extinguished the black flame burning on his body. But it seemed to be of no use. The flame could not be extinguished at all. Shit. After realizing the uniqueness of Amaterasu, Tetsuya Tensei was desperate. He didn't expect Dustless to be so evil, and also have such a terrible trick. Pucci. In the end, Tetragrammaton gritted his teeth and cut off his right arm and shoulder. The burning Amaterasu was separated from Tetragrammaton's body. Your courage is commendable. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but look at him in a new light, but his eyes were still cold. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Light appeared, and Dustless instantly disappeared again. He was like a ghost, coming and going without a trace. I am not his opponent. I must find a way to reverse this embarrassing situation. Tetsuya Tensei quickly planned in his heart, realizing the gap between him and Dustless. He was frustrated, and Dustless was bullying him like stepping on an ant. Remembering Yoshimura Gyozan's order, Tetsuya Tensei immediately turned around and fled to the exit. Since he couldn't kill Dustless, he could only run for his life. Retreat. After making up his mind, Tetsuya Tensei fled at lightning speed. There was no other way. The difference in strength between them was too big. Did I ask you to run? 90 Black Coffin of Breaking Tao. The pure black shadowless blades appeared out of nowhere and attacked from all directions. Tetsuya Tensei didn't even have a place to hide. Wherever he ran, the black light would follow, as if it had eyes, and he couldn't get rid of it. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. In the end, Tetsuya Tensei's body was penetrated by the black light, and countless pieces of rotten flesh peeled off from his body. Some parts of his body were even reduced to bones, and all his organs were destroyed by Dustless. Plop. After being injured so easily by Dustless, Tetsuya Tensei lost the strength to support his body, and fell to the ground helplessly. Chapter 2023. It's sad. Glancing down at Sifong Rincher, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. This guy clearly knew that his strength had reached the SSS level, but he had to come here to play some secret tracking. Before, Dustless also deliberately revealed his breath to be discovered by Sifong Rincher. His original intention was to hope that this guy would be sensible and leave. Who knew that he was still so ignorant and finally followed him? Cough cough cough. Sifong Rincher was obviously not completely dead. Although his internal organs had been destroyed, he still had a breath left. You are really like what the store manager said, you want to destroy the piece he created. Looking at Dustless blankly, Sifong Rincher looked helpless. Funny. Hearing this, Dustless stepped on Sifong Rincher's head and said disapprovingly, the so-called piece can't be created by a retired old man, he is too self-righteous. Kakaka. With Dustless's voice fell, Sifong Rincher's head suddenly exploded and turned into a pile of brain. And you? Suddenly turning his head, Dustless stared at the looming figure in the darkness and said coldly, you have seen enough, now it's time to come out and perform? This protagonist is dead, the other protagonist should show up. Amaterasu. It seemed that it was not fierce enough. Dustless destroyed Sifong Rincher's body, and the black flame evaporated it. This fierce style is very similar to us ghouls. A clear and melodious female voice was pleasing to the ear. In the darkness, a figure could be clearly seen strolling over. Her messy long hair added a touch of wildness to the young girl. How should I call you? The girl gradually came out of the darkness. Dustless asked faintly, Ito Yoshimura, Takatsuki-sen, or, the One-Eyed King is more suitable? By the way, you seem to be the boss of Aojirai Tree, right? What's the name of the idiot who was taught a lesson by me last time? It seems to be called Jason. He is also from your organization, right? He dares to attack me. Is it your order as the boss? Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen's calm face suddenly collapsed. Where does this guy come from? Why does he seem to know all my secrets at a glance? Takatsuki-sen looked at Dustless with a vigilant face, and could not help but lower her head and ponder. Tell me why you're here. Since it was rare to talk nonsense, Dustless simply said, if I'm interested, maybe you can leave here safely. You're really arrogant. Takatsuki-sen could not help but be speechless. It was the first time for her to see someone like Dustless who was so arrogant. Everyone was SSS class ghouls, and even one-eyed ghouls had more advantages than two-eyed ghouls. She really did not know where Dustless's confidence came from. How about we cooperate? Takatsuki-sen set her chips and said, overturn this rotten world in one fell swoop, establish a new system, a world where ghouls and humans coexist. Bullshit. Unexpectedly, Dustless was not interested in listening to Takatsuki-sen's nonsense, and sneered, one-eyed king, it seems that I have overestimated you. You are as stupid and childish as your father. What did you say? Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen looked angry, and there were a lot of Kagun erupting from her back, and it was about to cover her whole body. Don't you understand such a simple truth? You're just a child who has not grown up. Dustless despised Takatsuki-sen for a while, and continued to satirize, can a mouse get along with a cat? Can a snake coexist with an eagle? Can water and fire be compatible with each other? When you say that humans and ghouls can coexist peacefully, with all due respect, I already feel that you are mentally ill. The way of life of ghouls was to feed on humans. It was destined that the two sides could not coexist peacefully, even if they ate the dead people. If your family's elder who died of illness was eaten by ghouls, can you tolerate it? From the moment when ghouls were born, they were destined to fight with humans until one side was completely annihilated. That is to say, Takatsuki-sen's eyes suddenly shot out scarlet anger, and she asked coldly, that is to say, you intend to refuse to cooperate with me? You want to leave me alone? It seems that you want to be my enemy. Be your enemy? You're really ignorant. After a little exercise, Dustless rushed to the front of Takatsuki-sen in an instant, and the sharp edge of Kusanagi sword was taken out of the scabbard. I'm not your enemy, it's just a boring one-sided annihilation like just now. So fast. Her pupils suddenly shrank, and she was shocked with cold sweat. She panicked in her heart, we are both SSS class ghouls, why is the speed gap so big? Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, a large number of Kagun gushed out from Takatsuki-sen's back, like a poisonous snake. It went to Dustless to bite. Puchi. Who would have thought that the moment they touched the edge of Kusanagi's sword, they were all cut off and swept away. Light-speed kick. Then Dustless rose in the air, his right foot covered with high-density flash, and unceremoniously greeted Takatsuki-sen who had been wrapped by a large number of Kagun. Boom boom boom. Under the violent impact, the Kagun that had just covered the whole body collapsed and disappeared in an instant. Takatsuki-sen revealed her original appearance again. SSS class ghouls? This strength is really disappointing. The sword pointed at Takatsuki-sen's neck. Dustless sighed with boredom, and at the same time he suddenly noticed two strange breaths behind him, and then he sneered again and again. Your lackey is here too? You're overestimating yourself. All of a sudden, light filled the sky as countless divine weapons drilled out of the void. Wonkaibao. Chapter 2024. In the void, there were energy ripples all over the sky, and there were a lot of ripples in the void like rain. Then, countless magical weapons came out from it. The deadly cold light shrouded the oppressive atmosphere. These magical weapons, obviously, each of them had an extraordinary structure, which could be called the best of the best. Ghouls have this kind of trick? Why haven't I heard of it before? Is it because we don't know enough? Three surprised voices came from Takatsuki-sen and her two younger brothers, Noroi and Tatara. If you feel surprised, it can only show that you are short-sighted. Glancing at the two of them lightly, Wu Chen's mind moved slightly. Then, a continuous spectacular rain of weapons fell from the sky, and all of them stabbed at the two people who were stunned. "You two quickly retreat." Takatsuki-san yelled angrily, and secretly scolded the two people. The square lotus just now was the most suitable example. It was the same as Tatara and Noroi, but what was the final result? It was crushed by Dustless, and even its body was not left. Shoo shoo shoo. The number of weapons shot down was too many, making people overwhelmed. There was no place to escape. They could only resist this wave of destructive and powerful attacks with their bodies. There was no place to hide. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The two people's bodies suddenly became full of holes. Although they used kagun to wrap their bodies were still full of a large number of weapons. Their expressions were extremely painful, especially Tatara. His cheeks were distorted. As for the SS class ghoul, Noroi, it was a bit strange. His body could recover at will. Even if his head was cut off, he could recover again. These two cats and dogs are not bad. They deserve to be looked at differently. Dustless nodded with interest. Especially this Noroi's ability was quite amazing. This powerful recovery ability made Dustless couldn't help but think of the super regeneration of the Daimu Void. Ow ow ow. At the same time, there was a heart-wrenching scream from the opposite side. Taking advantage of the time when Dustless dealt with the two younger brothers, Takatsuki-san also completely changed into the state of Kakuja. The whole body became strange, surrounded by a large number of kagun. The scarlet eyes on the face stared at Dustless fiercely. "Submit or die?" The white bone big hand pointed at Dustless. Takatsuki-san questioned in a cold tone. Even when she spoke, the fierce roar was full of a wave, which was enough to shake the human's eardrum and make the blood come out. "Umph." Hearing that, Dustless just waved his sword. The golden cold light in his hand instantly penetrated Takatsuki-sen's ugly arm, and the wound suddenly began to spurt blood. "I should be the one asking this question. Will you submit or die?" Dustless asked coldly after he cut off the arm of Takatsuki-sen who had turned into Kakuja. Anyway, Takatsuki-sen's resilience was strong. Even if her arm was broken, she could grow another one, and it would not have any bad effect on her. Ao 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 ao. On the contrary, perhaps because of Dustless's provocation, Takatsuki-sen was irritated. Her big bloody mouth showed dense sharp teeth, and then she fiercely bit him. "You don't know when to stop." Seeing this, Dustless also gave up the mercy in his heart. It seemed that only by beating her, this girl would be obedient. "Is your body big?" "But in fact, mine is bigger." Kensusunu. A lot of chakra erupted from the body, and a mighty figure suddenly appeared, with a ferocious appearance, and the mighty figure radiated an unknown murderous aura. Ao ao ao. Under the control of Dustless, Kensusunu's big mouth also made a sharp roar, and the brutal sound waves turned into endless impact and spread out. Boom boom boom. Unable to bear the impact of Kensusunu, the long-abandoned warehouse first shook, and then it couldn't bear the impact of Kensusunu's explosion, and collapsed in an instant. "What the hell is that?" Seeing the super monster covering Dustless's body, everyone was stunned. They widened their eyes in disbelief and stared at the giant that was emitting an oppressive aura. Not to mention fighting, just looking at it made their confidence crumble. "Noro, this battle is not something we can participate in, it's better to hide and watch." Tatara said with a very unwilling look. He didn't expect Dustless to have such a big killing move, and the mighty figure was even bigger than Takatsuki-sen's body. "What is this? Your Kakuja state?" Takatsuki-sen was also shocked. She, who understood Kakuja's words, stared at the terrifying energy giant, and felt an unprecedented small and unbearable feeling. If you know the limit of Kensusunu, maybe you won't be so shocked. Seeing the shocked Takatsuki-sen, Dustless was too lazy to explain. He had already bet on Kensusunu as small as possible, but the mature Kensusunu covering his body, whether in power or physique, crushed Takatsuki Sr. Clang clang clang. Immediately, under the shocked gaze of Takatsuki-sen, a golden sword of several meters long suddenly appeared in the broad arm of the golden Kensusunu, aiming at Takatsuki Sr. Gulp. Feeling the sharpness of the golden sword, even with Takatsuki-sen's calmness, she couldn't help but be stunned at this moment, and for the first time in many years, her body had goosebumps. I must open more. If I'm hit by that thing, I'll be finished. Perceiving the fatal danger of the light sword, Takatsuki-sen decisively chose to avoid the sharpness, and decisively swept to the obstacle on the left. It seemed that she wanted to avoid Dustless's attack. Chapter 2025. Are you running? Dustless in the mature body, Kensusanoo sneered again and again. Takatsuki-sen's childish behavior was really funny. The word escape in front of Kensusanoo was meaningless. When the ultimate monster Kensusanoo appeared, it meant that everything had come to an end. It's good to play the game of cat and mouse occasionally to change the mood. Kensusanoo held the katana of light to change the direction. Wherever Takatsuki-sen ran, the hot edge would follow. Like an automatic navigation, there was no way to escape. Damn guy! Finding that she could not get rid of Dustless's attack anyway, Takatsuki-sen simply showed her ferocious side and gave up the plan to escape. Phew! Her ugly big feet rushed at the fastest speed in her life, and she crossed several meters in one step. You know that you can't escape, so you simply choose to kill me. Is this your last resort? Dustless's eyes narrowed slightly, and a dangerous light jumped in his eyes. Immediately afterward, Kensusanoo covered the whole body responded to Dustless's anger, and the katana swept out. Puchi! A huge slash whistled out. The dazzling light brought with it an unparalleled power. Even the air was cut apart by the chi, ripples that could be seen with the naked eye rippled out. Oh no! Realizing the danger of the oncoming slash, Takatsuki-sen in Kakuja form was shocked and quickly avoided it. However, although the idea was good, the speed of the slash was too fast, and the direction was extremely tricky. It just aimed at Takatsuki-sen's head, and it would kill her. Puchi! The dazzling edge penetrated Takatsuki-sen's body and tore her body into pieces. Several arms on the left side were all cut off at once. There were several broken bloody arms scattered on the ground. Did I miss? Dustless frowned and immediately raised the katana of light again. Wait. Takatsuki-sen was disgusted, seeing the katana of light held high. Her scarlet eyes flashed with fear. This sublime power crushed her inner self-confidence into powder. Looking at Takatsuki-sen carefully, Dustless said coldly, "Are you going to surrender? No room for cooperation?" Takatsuki-sen didn't give up and asked, "If we cooperate, we can definitely destroy this distorted worldview. Human beings and ghouls can live in peace. You also." Swish. Swish. However, before Takatsuki-sen continued to talk nonsense, Dustless's mature body Kensusanoo chopped down again. Boom boom boom. A huge and dangerous slash once again came rushing over. The biting cold edge of the slash cut a long and narrow crack in the ground. Its speed was several times faster than before. Damn it! Takatsuki-sen cursed loudly. When she wanted to escape again, it was too late. Puchi! The unstoppable slash crushed her body and almost split Takatsuki-sen into two. Although she escaped the fatal attack at the critical moment, even so, 1/3 of her body was still destroyed. It's so dangerous. Fortunately, I escaped from this blow in time. So many years of hard practice really didn't waste. While gasping, Takatsuki-sen was in a cold sweat. She didn't have the demeanor of an SSS class ghoul and the king of Ayajirai tree. Instead, she was very lucky like a clown. You barely dodged this attack? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but laugh out loud. One-eyed king, do you know that if I didn't deliberately go easy on you, you would have been completely annihilated in the first slash? What do you mean? Did you deliberately let me go before? Takatsuki-sen's face was pale. She thought that her strength was strong enough, so she was saved several times in a row. But it turned out that all this was because Dustless let her go, which was a big blow to her. You don't believe it? The mature body Kensusanoo's katana of light was raised high in the sky again. Not only that, Dustless's eyes suddenly rotated. Kakaka! A large number of high-density chakra broke out again, and the size of Kensusanoo expanded again. Compared with before, it became bigger in an instant. I'm asking you for the last time, are you sure you want to continue to fight against me? Surrender or die. Staring at the incomplete Takatsuki-sen, Dustless's tone was obviously full of killing intent, full of strong bloody smell. Compared with before, Takatsuki-sen's confidence was greatly lacking. She wanted to continue to fight, but the bad physical condition made her have no reason to answer Dustless. Although the recovery power was extremely strong, it could not be regenerated infinitely, and the consumption of each recovery was quite large. Moreover, this was not the most fatal problem. The key was that Dustless's Kansusunu was obviously much bigger than before. Under this situation, Takatsuki-sen was desperate. Well, you win from now on, you are the boss of the Aojirai tree. The form was stronger than the person. Tatsuki-sen had to bow her head. She was afraid that if she continued to resist, Dustless would really not hesitate to kill her. You know what's good for you. After hearing the words, Dustless's Kansusunu disappeared, and the huge oppressive feeling that shrouded the surrounding disappeared out of thin air. The several mountains that were on the chest of Takatsuki-sen and others also disappeared. Until Kansusunu disappeared, everyone's breathing became normal. The deterrent power of Kansusunu before was too big. The deadly oppressive feeling made people full of despair for the future, including the SSS class ghoul Takatsuki Sr. So, the new boss, what's the next plan of our organization? Looking at Dustless, Takatsuki-sen was quite curious about the purpose of Dustless. It's very simple. Dustless pondered a little and immediately said coldly, kill all the white pigeons. Those people who don't know what's good for them still want to catch me. Kill Cece first. Chapter 2026. Annihilate CCG? When Takatsuki-sen heard about Dustless's ambition, she couldn't help but be stunned. With the current strength of Aojirai tree, the chance of annihilating CCG was 0. First of all, not to mention other people, Arima Kisho alone was strong enough to make other ghouls desperate. Yes, my purpose is to annihilate CCG. Those white pigeons are so bold. They even identified me as an SSS class ghoul. They have identified me as an enemy. If I continue to let them live, isn't my kindness too cheap and ridiculous? Dustless said seriously, and at the same time he looked at Takatsuki-sen with deep meaning. This guy and Arima Kisho have a cooperative relationship. Staring at Tatsuki-sen, who returned to her human appearance, Dustless was silent. About 10 years ago, Takatsuki-sen and Arima Kisho set foot on a pirate ship, and Arima Kisho himself also had the bloodline of ghouls. Arima Kisho was actually the one-eyed king, before Takatsuki-sen, and later the two reached a secret cooperative relationship. But all this had nothing to do with Dustless. Those who follow me will prosper, those who oppose me will die, whoever goes against me must die, that's all. Let's go, take me to your organization to see. Looking at Takatsuki-sen and others who were stunned, Dustless left. Dustless and others left for about half and 15 minutes, a large group of white pigeons came. Such a big movement, it was impossible for no one to notice it. It's a fierce fight. Mado Wusu carefully observed the messy battle scene and could not help but frown. Especially when she saw the long and narrow cracks on the ground and the warehouse destroyed by the overwhelming strength, she felt even more incredible. Can this still be done by ghouls? It's too strange. It seems that only the SSS class ghouls can make such a big movement. Marid Itsuki came to Mado Wusu. They had known each other for decades. Although the relationship was not harmonious, the 10 years of friendship was not a joke. Compared to this boring question, I'm more concerned about. At the same time, a handsome man with white hair and glasses attracted everyone's attention. The kuan-ku in his hand was completely different from the others. The suitcase was pure black. Who is the person who fought with the SSS class ghouls? Looking at the messy battle scene, and the cracks left by Susanu's destruction everywhere, it was a ghastly sight. Even Arima Kisho couldn't help but fall silent at this moment, thinking about who was so powerful. The only SSS class ghoul that Arima Kisho could think of was the one-eyed king, but who was the person who fought with him? In the base of the Aojirai tree, Takatsuki-sen completely entered the Kakujiga state. Her appearance was extremely ferocious, which was the opposite of the previous petite girl. She exuded a majestic anger. Seeing Takatsuki-sen, the followers of Aojiri Tree were stunned and subconsciously distanced themselves from this guy. Takatsuki-sen's brutality was famous in Aojiri Tree. From now on, at the same time, a hazy black shadow slowly walked out of the darkness, wearing a casual coat, and his face always had a slight arc. The appearance of this person attracted a lot of ghouls who did not know what he was doing. He is the new boss of our Aojiri Tree. Takatsuki-sen pointed at Dustless. She was quite unwilling to give up the Aojiri Tree that she created by herself. She was really unwilling. However, what can she do even if she was unwilling? Dustless defeated her. The world of ghouls was so cold and ruthless, either they were superior or they would always be a dog. It's you? In the Aojiri Tree, there were obviously people who were familiar with Dustless. After hearing the words, Dustless was also attracted by this person. He swept along the place where the voice sounded, and the corner of his mouth suddenly surged with a faint arc. Isn't this Jason? The strong man who came into his sight was Jason, the strong man who looked like he saw a ghost. Why, do you have a problem with me? Seeing the stunned Jason, Dustless just glanced at him lightly and immediately said coldly, "If you want to continue to challenge me, I can give you a chance, but the result will definitely be the same as before." After hearing the words, Jason dared not to say anything. He subconsciously glanced at Tatsuki-sen, who had obviously not healed wounds on her body, and his face suddenly became pale. Boss was defeated by this guy. Jason looked at Dustless with great fear, and decisively gave up. According to his understanding of Tatsuki-sen, this girl would never easily hand over the position of the boss of the Aojiri Tree. Since she chose Dustless to inherit the Aojiri Tree at this moment, then the two sides must have had a big fight, and if it was not wrong, the one who was defeated was Takatsuki-sen. The scars on her body were the best example. "I have a problem." At this time, a very dissatisfied tone suddenly came, revealing endless dissatisfaction and doubt. Is this guy a ghoul? He has a clear human taste. Let our food lead the ghouls. I can't accept this kind of funny joke. Looking at the source of the sound, the young ghoul with a handsome face with a few traces of arrogance suddenly floated like an eyeball. Isn't this Kirishima Ayato, the younger brother of Kirishima Tuka? Interesting. With a few imperceptible smiles on his face, Dustless asked with interest, "What do you think is appropriate?" "It's very simple." Kirishima Ayato did not even think about it and said without hesitation, "Of course, defeat." The words on his mouth stopped abruptly. Kirishima Ayato suddenly sweated. Looking up, the dark red eyes were staring at him motionlessly, and his soul was trembling at this moment. Chapter 2027. Do you still have any opinion? Dustless stared at Kirishima Ayato and said lazily, "If you have any opinion, just come. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Of course, I will only beat you half to death." Dustless's harsh words fell into the ears of Kirishima Ayato. His sweaty cheeks suddenly showed anger. His eyes stared straight at Dustless, as if he was not done with him. But the funny thing was, in any case, Kirishima Ayato did not dare to do anything. Damn, what level of ghoul is this guy? Kirishima Ayato screamed in his heart. Dustless's violent momentum made people not dare to act rashly. Even breathing felt uncomfortable, oppressed, and maybe suffocated at any time, let alone fighting. "Listen to me, you group of bastards." Seeing that Kirishima Ayato was scared, Dustless's cold voice passed through everyone's ears. "No matter who your former boss is, now you just need to understand that your boss is called Dustless. The result of disobeying me is very simple, that's it." Amaterasu. Dustless's eyes slightly stared. The ghoul who was focused by his sight did not have time to scream, and turned into dust in the blink of an eye. This guy. When the members of Aojiri Tree saw this scene, they all nodded like a rattledrum. Dustless's ruthlessness seemed to be more than the one-eyed king. "If I don't kill a few people, how can I scare you group of idiots?" Dustless smiled and did not speak, and immediately his eyes fell on Takatsuki-sen's body, staring at her huge body. "Tomorrow we will start to attack CCG, First destroy CCG in the 20th district. The group of white pigeons is too annoying. The next morning, the sun just rose, CCG was attacked by a large number of ghouls, and they were busy jumping up and down. This time the ghouls were bold to the extreme, they even fought with CCG on the road during the day. Unfortunately, CCG was still at an absolute disadvantage. They were beaten by the ghouls, and almost all of them were in the trend of collapse. The pedestrians on the road were scared and fled. Damn it! Did these bastards take the wrong medicine? Some of the CCG members who resisted in the front cursed. In the past, ghouls were almost in the gloomy corners. The number of times they attacked CCG in the daytime like this could be counted on one's fingers, or even none. Although the ghouls were strong, CCG was not bad, but this time the army suddenly invaded, the white pigeons were defeated, so that the CCG's high-level officials had to hold a large-scale combat meeting to discuss the serious issues at hand. In CCG's base camp, the director and Shuji Matsuri, who were angry, saw the battle report in their hands, and finally smashed all the teacups in their hands, and roared furiously, "What happened to the group of ghouls? They dare to attack us in public, who is controlling all this behind the scenes?" The usually gentle and elegant Shuji Matsuri's eyes were red at the moment, and the speed of breathing was several times faster than usual. It is an organization called Aojirai Tree. It is very powerful and unusually mysterious, and it is said that, as one of the special investigators, Marid Itsuki reported, Dustless, who was listed as an SSS class ghoul by us some time ago, also joined this powerful organization, and there is more news that he is the boss of Aojirai Tree. Dustless was different from other ghouls. He had always been alone, and he did not have the hobby of wearing a mask. Therefore, it was not a big problem for CCG to get his own information. Dustless? Shuji Matsuri was stunned and immediately asked calmly, "Do you have enough confidence to defeat that guy? Because of him, the whole Tokyo is now in a mess, and we are asked to eliminate this evil organization immediately." Seeing that Shuji Matsuri hated ghouls, and even wanted to tear all the ghouls into pieces, all the CCG members who participated in this meeting nodded deeply. But if Dustless was here, he would not be able to help but laugh, because Shuji Matsuri, as the director, was an out-and-out ghoul. Not only that, CCG also had a special identity, the organization. In other words, CCG was an extremely evil organization. In the past, ghouls were hiding in the dark, living like rats crossing the street, but now it was different. After Dustless was upgraded to the big boss of Aojirai Tree, all the ghouls were active, and now they attacked CCG even more fiercely. Ding ding ding. At this time, the phone on the table suddenly rang. "This is..." Shuji Matsuri frowned, and immediately picked up the phone decisively. When he was about to speak, there was a voice asking for help on the other side of the phone. "I am Mado Wusu, I encountered One-Eyed Owl here, and Dustless, who is listed as an SSS class ghoul. They seem to be colluding." On the other side, Dustless and others also frowned. "Is it appropriate for you to let him leak information like this?" Takatsuki-san stared at Dustless. She saw this guy lazily leaning on the wall, enjoying the comfortable sunshine in the morning, and his comfortable appearance seemed to be very obsessed. Mado Wusu called the senior management of CCG in front of them and reported all the tragic situations here to Shuji Matsuri. "What do you think is not appropriate? Instead of letting us find CCG, it is better to let them take the initiative to come to us. Isn't it more suitable and faster?" Dustless said his thoughts. It was too troublesome to find them one by one. It was better to let them ask for support. It was better to kill them all. That's right. It is better to take the initiative to attract all the white pigeons to destroy them. Takatsuki-san nodded immediately. It was indeed faster to lure the enemy to destroy them than to find them one by one. Chapter 2028. Amon, support for a while, the reinforcements will come. Mado Wusu glanced at the tired Amon Kotaro. She pretended to be calm on the surface, but she smiled helplessly in her heart. A superior investigator and a first-class investigator resisted 2 SSS class ghouls, as well as 2 SS class ghouls, and even several S-class ghouls with good strength. What is this if not a dream? I will give you two a chance to choose, just pick an opponent. If you can win, you can go back alive. Looking down at Mado Wusu and Amon Kotaro, Dustless rarely showed kindness. Hey, are you looking down on us? The young and aggressive Amon Kotaro was angry. His hands were holding Kuin-ku tightly. The Kuin-ku in his hand was terrible like a meteor hammer. I am afraid that ordinary people can't hold it. Since you let us take the initiative to choose the enemy? The sharp eyes were like an eagle. Mado Wusu's eyes swayed around and finally fixed on Dustless, and said with a very certain tone, "No, it's you. The boss of Aojirai Tree." Ha! Mado Wusu's words fell, and before Dustless opened his mouth to attack, other people couldn't help but ridicule. Is your head broken by the door? With your level, you still want to challenge Dustless. Jason sneered loudly. How did you become a superior investigator with such a stupid head? Yes, he must be an idiot, or he was upgraded to a superior investigator. The SS class ghoul Tatara also sneered. Don't talk nonsense, do you dare or not? Mado Wusu asked coldly. Her rough old face showed no regret and determination. Is your purpose? Dustless glanced at Mado Wusu and immediately walked slowly. Forget it, don't say that I am bullying you. If he didn't guess wrong, Mado Wusu just wanted to test his trump card. After all, CCG's White Pigeon's understanding of Dustless was still blank, and then the information obtained from Dustless was transferred to other ghouls. Attack Demon! With a shout, Mado Wusu swooped down, and the umbrella-shaped conch smashed towards Dustless's head. The speed of this ghoul investigator is not bad. The silent Takatsuki-sen's words had a rare appreciation. Although Mado Wusu was a superior investigator, his real strength was far beyond this level, and his movements seemed to be very skilled, and he did it in one breath, and his speed was also the same. Of course, Mr. Mado will definitely smash his head. Amon Kotaro was elated. Wusu Mado had always been the person he respected the most. Something will be smashed, but... Takatsuki-sen's tone was a little strange. She had witnessed the hardness of Dustless's head. Bang! The all-out attack with the weight of Mount Tai smashed onto Dustless's head, and a burst of ka-ka-ka sound was immediately heard. Success! Hearing the cracking sound similar to the skull's collapse, Amon Kotaro was overjoyed and looked along the line of sight. His ecstatic face was frozen, and his eyes were staring at Dustless, almost falling out. How is this possible? Amon Kotaro was shocked to find that even if Dustless did not have any defense and was hit by Mado Wusu, his head was safe and sound, and his cheeks always remained calm. What was broken before was, damn, is this bastard's head made of diamond? Mado Wusu cursed, staring at the fragments of conch on the ground. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Just when his conch smashed onto Dustless's head, his conch instantly collapsed and became a pile of useless debris. Is the head of a ghoul so hard? The hardness of a diamond may not be so high. The conch of the ghoul investigator was destroyed, indicating that he has no way out, so... Amon Kotaro raised his thumb gently. The front part condensed dazzling light, and a large number of high-density photons gathered on it. In the next life, I will be a panda with no worries, so I won't suffer. Laser. The light without an endpoint flicked out. The speed was too fast, and it disappeared in a flash. Almost the time to react, it penetrated Mado Wusu's body. Puchi. The heart on the chest was pierced by the hot light, and a burnt hole about the size of a fist was clearly visible. The whole heart of Mado Wusu had been evaporated by Dustless. Boom. Her heart was destroyed, and even the gods couldn't save her. Mado Wusu lost the source of her power, and her soul seemed to be taken away, and she fell to the ground helplessly. Mado-san. Amon Kotaro came quickly, trembling, holding the body of Mado Wusu, and the whole person was twitching slightly. I want you to die with me. The most respected idol was killed. Dustless's cold action completely ignited Amon Kotaro, who was a powder keg. He desperately took conch like a meteor hammer and smashed it. Buzz. Seeing this, Dustless gently waved his right arm and activated the glint-glinting fruits ability. The palm of his hand was like a black hole, full of majestic gravity, and a large number of photons in the vacuum were absorbed. Yasukani no Magatama. His expression turned cold, and he decisively threw out a large number of flashes in his hand. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The golden light holes in the sky shot out, and the number was overwhelming, and all of them bombarded Amon Kotaro like a rainstorm, and each light bullet had an indestructible edge. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The biting cold halo penetrated Amon Kotaro's body, and his whole body was like a sieve, and there were tiny holes left by the flashes everywhere, including his head, which was densely packed. Your relationship is like that of a master and a disciple. Letting the two of you die together is the heavens giving me face. You have to thank me when you go to hell. Wu Chen muttered in a low voice and brushed past the two of them. Chapter 2029. Such a ruthless style is not like you. Takatsuki-san simply showed her human appearance. Seeing that CCG was about to be completely defeated, there was no need to continue to hide. Anyway, she was going to die, why should she hide? It was completely superfluous and even would be laughed at. Looking at Jason and Kirishima Ayaka, they all showed their true appearance to people. She, the former Aojirai tree, did not need to be afraid. As for Dustless, he never covered it, there was no need to. Afraid? What a joke. What you are doing, please stop now. At this time, an old and powerful voice suddenly sounded, attracting everyone's attention in an instant, including Dustless, who also looked at the source of the voice. It turned out to be you. Is it a small world? Dustless and others all looked at the voice. The people who came out to make trouble this time were the people of the antique coffee shop, such as the shop manager Yoshimura Gakusen. Are you here to stop us? Staring at Yoshimura Gakusen, Dustless sighed. You are a ghoul, why do you want to guard peace so boring? It is impossible for ghouls and humans to coexist. Still the same sentence, you eat others, and you want to talk about coexistence with others? Is this possible? Ridiculous ignorance. Oh guy. Then, just at this time, Takatsuki-san suddenly opened her mouth. Her eyes were filled with raging hatred. Where was the kindness of seeing her biological father? It was obvious that she saw the enemy who killed her mother. This is interesting. Seeing this, Dustless suddenly smiled. Takatsuki-san, as the daughter of the shop manager, why did she hate him so much? The actual reason was very simple, because the shop manager abandoned Takatsuki-san, causing Takatsuki-san to have a psychological shadow in her childhood. Because of this reason, in the original book, Takatsuki-san deliberately revealed the information of the shop manager to CCG, causing the entire antique coffee shop to be destroyed by CCG. Hee, I like to see the father and daughter killing each other. Wu Chei's mouth showed an evil smile. He decisively chose to be silent, watching other father and daughter killing each other. Wasn't this a very interesting scene? Takatsuki-san, don't be bewitched by this guy. Seeing his daughter looking at him with hatred, Yoshimura Gyozen, the store manager, was heartbroken. This was his own daughter, and now it had become a father and daughter killing each other. How could he not be sad? Hey, old man. Although you can eat human flesh indiscriminately, you can't say such nonsense. Dustless looked coldly at the store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, and said unhappily, I have never lied to your daughter. You have to understand that she wanted to kill me yesterday. Is it necessary to bewitch Takatsuki-san? It was completely unnecessary. It didn't matter whether she was there or not. Yes, this matter has nothing to do with Dustless. Takatsuki-san also said coldly. This was a private matter between her and the store manager. It had nothing to do with Dustless, and there was no need for others to participate. You bastard! At this moment, an unusually harsh voice came over. Wu Chen raised his head and looked over. A face full of anger immediately floated into his eyes. I didn't expect the salted fish to turn over. Dustless touched his chin and muttered with interest. This person had black hair, wearing the professional uniform of the antique coffee shop. The black hair was very handsome, and the gentle face looked quite charming. Kaneki-ken? Looking at the teenager with interest, Dustless suddenly had a feeling that he had misjudged him. Looking closely, careful people would find that Kaneki Ken's figure had obviously become a lot taller than before. It was not that he suddenly grew taller, but after crazy exercise, his body had become stronger than before. "Are you here to trouble me?" Kaneki Ken. Looking at the black-haired teenager with boredom, Dustless asked jokingly, "Why do you look like you want to beat me?" "Ah, that's really scary. Even a cat can beat people." Wasn't the former Kaneki Ken a cat? A soft egg? "I have to thank you for this. You let me see the nature of this world." Kaneki Ken looked coldly at Dustless. His face was full of hostility. Not only that, several tail-like kaguns surged out from his back. As for why Kaneki Ken hated and even hated Dustless? Or because Dustless tricked him before, causing this guy to almost be ruthlessly eaten by Tsukuyamashi. "You've made a lot of progress." Wu Chun sighed in admiration. Then, his eyes revealed a coldness that was even more terrifying than frost. "A trash wants to challenge me? The world has really changed these days." Phew. Kaneki Ken swooped down with the speed of a storm, coming and going without a trace. Only a vague afterimage could be seen. "Go to hell." The kagun on his back were all transformed into sharp barbs, and all of them shot toward Dustless's head. It seemed that he wanted to simply kill him with one blow. Puchi. Without exception, the sharp kagun was ferocious, jumping with a dangerous halo, and all of them penetrated Dustless's head like a sharp blade. "Now you're dead, you're just like this, what SSS class ghoul." Kaneki Ken snorted disdainfully and couldn't help but be proud. Puchi. Just at this time, when Kaneki Ken was enraptured, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen, and the strength of his body was drained. He looked down subconsciously, and it was a sharp, deadly sword. "Sorry, I'm really sorry to make you happy, but I still want to remind you that it was just a simple clone technique." Chapter 2030. How is this possible? Ghouls have this ability. It's completely witchcraft. Kaneki Ken clenched his fists and looked at Dustless, who was smiling evilly, and his lungs were about to jump out. This guy really has a lot of witchcraft. The situation on Dustless's side, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen and her daughter, Takatsuki-san, all saw clearly at a glance. Seeing the ability of Dustless, the two people's hearts were completely different. "It seems that I chose the right target this time." As an SSS class ghoul, Takatsuki-sen was full of joy. Although this was just a simple substitute technique, the shock on her was indescribable. After all, ghouls had never seen ninjutsu before, and it was normal to not understand its uniqueness. The shock was inevitable. And since she followed Dustless, she naturally hoped that the new leader would be stronger and stronger. After all, it was better to be under a big tree. "Damn monster, how do the people of CCG work? This kind of guy should be eradicated early." Compared with Takatsuki-san, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen's expression was stiff. Deep in her heart, she couldn't help but complain about the irresponsible CCG. Is this a SSS class ghoul? His strength was far beyond that level. Kakaka! In Kaneki Ken's body, Dustless stirred the edge of the Kusanagi sword. Kaneki Ken suddenly gritted his teeth in pain, his eyes were clearly bloodshot, and his mouth was full of disgusting saliva. Ao 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 ao. The painful roar of being tortured slowly came out from Kaneki Ken's throat. "Hey, how do you feel?" Hearing Kaneki Ken's painful groans, Dustless felt particularly refreshed in his heart. The Kusanagi Cloud Sword was emitting a terrifying power, constantly destroying Kaneki Ken's internal organs. Especially since the Kusanagi Cloud Sword was a light sword, it also carried a scorching heat corrosion, causing unbearable pain. Kaneki Ken was being ravaged by Dustless. Let him go. However, the good situation did not last long. The blue void suddenly changed. Looking up, the sky suddenly turned into blood red, and the dense halos dyed the sky with a radius of tens of meters. This is... Dustless stared blankly for a moment, only to see red blood rain falling from the sky with the momentum of toppling mountains and overturning seas. This move is somewhat similar to my glinting fruits, Yasakani no Magatama, although its power is far inferior. Dustless nodded in surprise. Seeing Kirishima Tuka rising into the air, he just glanced at her casually. Immediately, Dustless's right hand suddenly grabbed the half-dead Kaneki Ken. Could it be? Seeing this scene, Kirishima Tuka's pupils suddenly froze, the corner of her mouth twitched, and she cursed, "How despicable!" Dustless used Kaneki Ken as a shield in front of him, defending against the dense and biting cold attacks. The majority of the attacks were all blocked by Kaneki Ken. Poochie! 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 Dense red flashes of light pierced through Kaneki Ken's body, unceasingly striking his body and mind. His entire body was like a hole, bleeding incessantly. Looking carefully, Kaneki Ken's body was full of holes. "I'm despicable?" Hearing this, Dustless looked at Kirishima Tuka disapprovingly and said disapprovingly, "Tuka, I used Kaneki Ken's body to bear the friendship between you two. You should think I'm noble, right? You have a sharp tongue." Kirishima Tuka didn't speak, but the burning yukaku behind her swayed gently. Her whole body ignored the existence of the laws of physics, and flew to the sky unhurriedly, staring at Dustless with an overlooking gaze. "Do you want to use that trick again?" Staring at the flame-like yukaku behind Kirishima Tuka's back, she gently fanned, and a large number of blood-red halos fell from the sky again. "Isn't this guy afraid of killing Kaneki Ken?" Dustless's face was strange, and he once again blocked Kaneki Ken in front of him. Although this trick can be ignored directly by Dustless, taking advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to let Kaneki Ken bear the test of friendship, isn't it just right? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Like a lot of gravel, all the sharpness fell. Dustless stood behind Kaneki Ken without fear. With him as a meat shield, he didn't need to worry about anything at all. Poochie! 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 Exactly the same as the scene just now, Kaneki Ken's body was once again smashed by Kirishima Tuka, bleeding incessantly, and the painful wailing of the double blow also roared out from Kaneki Ken's throat. Kaneki Ken's body, which had just recovered, was even more seriously destroyed by Kirishima Tuka, this cheating teammate. Despicable guy! Kirishima Tuka, who felt indignant, stomped her feet, and her beautiful eyes burned with a raging flame. "Is it over?" Slightly sweet, perceiving that Kirishima Tuka, who was temporarily floating in the sky, stopped attacking, Dustless threw Kaneki Ken aside like throwing garbage, and immediately jumped lightly. His body crossed the distance of layers of space. "You are not the only one who can fly." Spitting out a big breath of cold air, Dustless's big hands suddenly grabbed half of the yukaku on Kirishima Tuka's back, and then the other hand coldly raised the unparalleled sharp Kusanagi sword. When did he appear? How fast is this guy? Even his shadow is not seen. Space travel? Turning her head and staring back at Dustless's cold cheeks, Kirishima Tuka inevitably felt fear. The indifferent eyes were like sharp barbs. Dustless's strength crushed her self-confidence. A strong person is not terrible, but if you can't even capture the opponent's movement trajectory, is it necessary to continue this boring battle? Not at all. Anyway, it's a one-sided crush. Chapter 2031. It was no wonder that Kirishima Tuka was so stunned. The speed of light was too fast. The simple naked eye, or other special abilities belonging to the ghouls, could not capture the existence of Dustless. Shoo! After a few seconds of preparation, Dustless's Kusanagi sword in his hand slashed down. Poochie! The powerful force was obviously not what Kirishima Tuka could bear. She saw that the burning yukaku was suddenly smashed by a sword. It was very simple. Shoo! Without the support of yukaku, Kirishima Tuka, who was floating in the air, found it difficult to maintain her balance, and inevitably fell to the ground. She stared at Dustless's cold face. From the beginning of my appearance in this world, the throne of the sky that has been idle for a long time has ushered in its new owner, Dustless. A ghoul doesn't deserve to own the sky. Dustless glanced at Kirishima Tuka as if nothing happened, and his floating body landed on the ground. Shoo! Who would have thought that just landed on the left side of the body? The majestic hostility rushed to him. Store manager Yoshimura Kozen? Seeing the store manager who entered the Kakurina, Dustless was slightly surprised, not because of his strength, but because it was exactly the same as the description in the legend. The body was full of bird-like plump fluff, so it was called owl. Shoo! However, before the store manager Yoshimura Kozen approached Dustless, another one-eyed monster, which was larger than the store manager, flashed in front of Dustless. Tsuke, I'm really looking forward to the battle between the one-eyed warriors. Glancing at Takatsuki-sen, who was obviously larger than the store manager, Dustless said calmly, "It's up to you, Sen, how to deal with this guy, you should know in your heart." Of course. The hoarse voice came from Takatsuki-sen's big mouth full of fangs, and she whispered, "Now become my nourishment, father." Although swallowing SSS class ghouls was not sure that she could upgrade her level, there was one thing that was beyond doubt. If she could really swallow Yoshimura Kozen, Takatsuki-sen's strength would inevitably improve. What a good show! Dustless bowed his head and silently observed this scene. Although the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen and Takatsuki-sen were SSS level, the strength gap between them really existed. In the original work, in the Battle of the Beggar One-Eyed Owl, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was besieged by several special investigators, and it was almost a stage of crushing defeat. Even if it was not for Takatsuki-sen, the store manager would have been besieged and killed by the special investigators of CCG. On the contrary, when Takatsuki-sen dealt with those special ghouls in the later stage, she almost killed them with overwhelming strength. The strength was completely different. Therefore, it was enough to see that although they were all SSS class ghouls, there was still a gap between them, and Dustless also had confidence in Takatsuki Sr. Now is the time when this guy is most careless. The black figure hiding among the corpses stared at Dustless attentively. At the same time, it approached Dustless at a weak speed that was almost negligible. Got it. After a while, the black figure that quietly approached Dustless suddenly jumped up, and the tight fist hit Dustless's back. Boom! This scene came too suddenly, causing Dustless to be severely injured in an instant. The power of the fist was extremely extraordinary. It directly blasted Dustless's body into a large piece of light. It was like floating snow that disappeared with the wind and disappeared in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The body was ruthlessly smashed, a large number of photons were floating in the void, Dustless's body and breath disappeared, it was almost certain that he was dead. At this moment, the person behind the scene who attacked Dustless was Kirishima Ayato. You idiots deserve to be used. Even if you want to attack Wu Chen, you should choose the most suitable time. After he succeeded, Kirishima Ayato laughed loudly and was in high spirits. He did not intend to betray Dustless, but Kirishima Ayato saw Dustless tear up Kirishima Tuka's yukaku. She suddenly broke out, quietly approached Dustless secretly and launched a lightning-like attack. Although he did not care about his sister on the surface, deep in his heart, Kirishima Ayato still cared about Tuka very much, otherwise, he would not take the risk of being exposed to attack Dustless. This was completely a bet with his life. Everyone stop, the boss of Ayajirai Tree, Dustless has what? I'm telling you clearly, I'm not dead yet. However, Kirishima Ayato's tone did not completely fall, the extremely contemptuous and disdainful voice resounded through the field, and the morale of the ghouls in the entire battle soared. You're not dead. Staring at the gathered photons, Kirishima Ayato's mouth was wide enough to hold his fist. He had seen with his own eyes that Wuchen's body was smashed into countless rays of light by himself. Why did this guy resurrect again? Bansho Tenshin. Since Kirishima Ayato took the initiative to betray him, Dustless naturally would not be polite. In fact, Kirishima Ayato's betrayal were also within his expectations. After all, Dustless bullied his sister, Kirishima Tuka. Therefore, Dustless could conclude that Kirishima Ayato would absolutely not watch Tuka being beaten. Although the relationship between the two was very bad, Dustless knew that Kirishima Ayato's heart still liked Kirishima Tuka. After all, she was his only sister. Damn it. At the moment of the eruption of gravity, Kirishima Ayato's body suddenly became uncontrollable, swaying left and right, and lost control of his body for a moment. Get over here. The big hand suddenly grabbed, the gravity distorted the time and space, there were subtle ripples visible to the naked eye, and immediately Kirishima Ayato's body was sucked by this strong gravity. Chapter 2032. Where did this guy get so many strange abilities? Kirishima Ayato continued to struggle, staring at Dustless's right hand. The small black hole exuded a majestic gravitational force. It seemed that even the world was going to be swallowed by it. It was very terrible. I can't be caught. Kirishima Ayato's lips were bleeding. He knew that if he was caught by Dustless, he would be completely finished, so he used all his strength. His feet stepped on the ground, and his kagun was like a rope, tightly grasping the surrounding ruins. You can struggle. Staring at Kirishima Ayato with interest, Dustless increased the output of chakra in his body. Come here. The black hole in the palm of his hand erupted a more violent gravitational force, pulling the time and space. The black shadow gradually radiated, and it had the momentum to swallow the sky. Kirishima Ayato suddenly could not continue to hold on, and the whole person quickly rushed to Dustless. Go to hell. Seeing Kirishima Ayato rushing to him, Dustless's other free hand suddenly raised and said lazily, I heard that the recovery power of ghouls is very strong. But, can you heal your body when it is split in half? Stop it. At the same time, Kirishima Tuka suddenly stared at Dustless with anger, and whispered, If you dare to hurt my brother, I will not let you go easily. Is that so? It's terrible. Dustless made a fearful expression, and immediately put away the Kusanagi sword. It seemed that he was really afraid of the threat of Kirishima Tuka. You know what to do. Seeing this, Kirishima Tuka glanced at Wu Chen. After seeing that he gave up, she breathed a sigh of relief. However, before Kirishima Tuka calmed down, Dustless's sudden action shocked her. She saw Kirishima Ayato's body slowly collapsed and dissipated. Truth-seeking ball. The dark ball hit Kirishima Ayato's body. There was no damage on the surface, but strangely his body began to collapse slowly. What did you do to my body? Kirishima Ayato looked at Dustless in panic. His body began to disappear from his legs. You bastard! Seeing this, Kirishima Tuka's eyes were bloodshot, jumping with crazy light. You may not know my style of doing things. Glancing at Kirishima Tuka faintly, Wu Chen played with his thumb in boredom. From time to time, there was a click-click sound. Ignorant, is there any difference between threatening me and seeking death? Since some things have been done, they must pay the price. She dared to threaten him. Not only did it not alleviate Dustless's concern about killing people, but it made his heart more disgusted. Especially Kirishima Tuka was just a ghoul. Farewell. In dust 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 Dustless. Kirishima Tuka, who was hit hard, glared at Dustless with a crazy face. She wanted to die together with him. You really don't know how high the sky is. You want to kill me? At your current level, even if your strength is multiplied by 100 times, you are not my opponent. Dustless snorted and said unreasonably, From the moment of birth, ghouls have to eat human flesh to relieve their inner hunger. This guy has eaten so many people, what's wrong with me killing him now? He eats dead people. Kirishima Tuka quibbled. Is it? Dustless stared at Kirishima Tuka, who was blushing, and he could even see the tears in her eyes. Tuka. Dustless's tone suddenly became a lot more friendly and said softly, If you are a human, your relatives' bodies are eaten by ghouls as food, then how do you feel? Hearing this, Kirishima Tuka was speechless. Her small face showed a dull and dazed color. Does this need to be said? Of course, the person who ate her brother's body was cut into pieces, and the bones were burned to ashes. You're speechless, huh? Kirishima Tuka's performance was expected by Dustless, and he said softly, Therefore, ghouls living in the world is the beginning of evil, and they are killed by themselves. It was natural to eat others for revenge, just like Mado Wusu's wife, Mado Wei, was killed by the one-eyed owl, and then she was eaten beyond recognition. Was it wrong for Mado Wusu to hate ghouls? Tuka, don't listen to this man's nonsense. This is all nonsense, deceit. Noticing that Kirishima Tuka was fooled by Dustless, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen quickly reminded loudly, ghouls and humans should coexist with humans, boom. However, sadly, before Yoshimura Gyozen could continue to talk nonsense, he was hit by Takatsuki Senator. Although both of them were SSS-class ghouls, there was indeed a gap in strength. Looking at the body shape, Yoshimura Gyozen was not as good as Takatsuki Sr. Whoosh. At the same time, the harsh sirens sounded through the war-torn city. Looking up, a large number of police cars came quickly, and there were dozens of them. The protagonist is finally here, CCG. CCG was not a good thing. For example, their director, Washimatsuri, was an out-and-out ghoul. Arima Kisho was also a half-human with ghoul's blood, so he was so powerful that he could suppress SSS-class ghouls. And the so-called CCG was actually a very mysterious organization of ghouls, Chapter 2033. A large number of CCGs came down from the police cars with sirens, and a large number of white pigeons carrying briefcases surrounded them from all directions. The number is really scary. Dustless looked at this scene with interest. Seeing a large number of investigators rushing over, his face had a faint smile, and a lot of flashes appeared in his hand again. Yasukani no Magatama. The dense light eggs roared out, as dense as a rainstorm. Phew! At the moment when they were thrown out, a large number of investigators were killed, and the deadly light bombs were brewing powerful destruction, which was beyond the cognition of these investigators. After all, the previous ghouls used Kagun to attack, and the ghouls that manipulated light had never been heard of. Poochie! Many people were killed by the flash, and their bodies were left with shocking cracks. Some people who were not killed by a blow were lying on the ground and screaming. Their bodies were hit with more than a dozen holes, and even more, which was more uncomfortable than killing them. Bastard! Seeing this scene, some special ghoul investigators glared at Dustless with fire in their eyes. Ghoul investigators had been through countless training, and the number was small. The Confucians were so easily smashed by Dustless, how could they not feel pain in their hearts? Go to hell! Shinohara Yukinori, one of the special investigators, was wearing a heavy armor and immediately rushed in anger. His fierce appearance seemed to want a revenge for the ghoul investigators who were killed by Dustless. Fragile! Seeing this, Dustless just smiled disdainfully, staring at Shinohara Yukinori. His eyes were full of disapproval. A special ghoul investigator sounded scary, but the strength! Shinra Tensei. Shinohara Yukinori, who was wearing a heavy armor, was attacked by a strong wave, and his body instantly flew out. Poochie! After being hit, he fell more than 10 meters away. Shinohara Yukinori was lying on the ground, spurting blood. Even his forehead was like this. The whole person was bloody. It was horrible to look at. It's really fragile. Seeing that Shinohara Yukinori was so vulnerable, Dustless couldn't help but mock. Special investigator? I just used a small amount of strength to defeat the insect. Mr. Shinohara. Witnessing Shinohara Yukinori, who was killed in seconds, Juzo Suzuki stared at Dustless with an angry face, and his eyes were filled with bloodthirsty madness. Brat, if you're not convinced, just come at me. Dustless looked at Juzo Suzuki dully. Because there were too many ghouls, other special investigators went to support other white pigeons, and no one regarded Dustless as a target. After looking around, Dustless was disappointed to find that there was no trace of Ma Greijiang. I'll treat you as an appetizer as a big meal for now. His plain eyes fell on Juzo Suzuki with contempt. Dustless said sarcastically, CCG is just a group of garbage concentration camp, including you and Shinohara Yukinori. Dustless had a vicious face and didn't care about provoking Juzo Suzuki. What did you say? I dare you to say that again. Although Juzo Suzuki looked simple and ignorant, he also had a bottom line in his heart, Shinohara Yukinori. If anyone hurt this person, Juzo Suzuki would desperately fight with him. Don't say it once, 10 times will do. Dustless raised his voice, and the powerful voice angered Juzo Suzuki. CCG is garbage, CCG is garbage. Shinohara Yukinori is garbage, useless garbage, garbage, bastard, go to hell. Hearing the words, Juzo Suzuki was furious. Holding several sharp blades in both hands, he swooped down at all costs. Young man, your courage is commendable, but this head. Speaking up to this point, Wu Chen's tone instantly became gloomy. So stupid. Even the special investigator was killed by me. Do you think a small fry like you is qualified to speak? Focusing his eyes on this person, Dustless's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan blinked gently, and the surging eye power was like a volcanic eruption, radiating the light of choosing people. Tsukuyami. Put on. Juzo Suzuki, who looked at Dustless's eyes, fell to the ground strangely, and his body twitched inexplicably. Damn guy, what did you do to Juzo? Shinohara Yukinori found that Juzo Suzuki was instantly killed by Dustless, and his body was still twitching inexplicably. His old face was full of worry. He controlled his trembling body and walked slowly to Juzo Suzuki. Can you still stand up? Dustless was quite surprised by his physical strength, glanced at the armor covered by Shinohara Yukinori, and whispered, it seems that this scrap metal still has some use, but his eyes narrowed slightly, and Dustless's figure suddenly disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, the direction of Shinohara Yukinori's advancement suddenly became extremely bright, enough to scatter human eyes. Shinohara Yukinori subconsciously picked up his right hand to block in front of his eyes, and through the weak gap between his 5 fingers, he tried to observe the scene in front of him. Buzz buzz buzz. 5 or 6 meters ahead, a large number of flashes gathered, and the scorching light made people unable to get close, and it was extremely dazzling, giving people the illusion of looking directly at the sun. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Immediately afterward, this inexplicably condensed light rushed forward and rushed in front of Shinohara Yukinori in an instant. Not good. Shinohara Yukinori suddenly realized that the god of death was waving at him, and he quickly used all his strength to retreat. However, compared with the speed of light, Shinohara Yukinori's speed was as slow as a turtle crawling. Even if it was a short moment, Dustless could easily kill him hundreds of times. Poochie! The light sword swept across the void, and golden ripples appeared in the air. The dangerous and cold light of the sword shredded Shinohara Yukinori's body. Chapter 2034. Kacha! Although Shinohara Yukinori's body was covered with a strong armor, it was obviously difficult to resist Dustless's attack. A long and narrow gap was torn out. It was extremely simple, like cutting a piece of paper. It was extremely simple. Poochie! The armor was destroyed, and Shinohara Yukinori's body naturally could not be spared. The golden edge continued to move forward until his entire body was penetrated. Goodbye, everyone. As the desperate voice fell, Shinohara Yukinori closed his eyes in despair. His vitality was exhausted, and his body was separated into 2. He was simply cut in half by Dustless. Look, that's Mr. Shinohara. Oh my god, how is this possible? The special investigator was killed by that pervert. Damn it, how can we deal with such an enemy? Even the special investigator can't do it, let alone us. Is this the strongest SSS class school? Let's run away. Dustless killed Shinohara Yukinori with overwhelming strength. Such a rare scene was seen by almost all the ghoul investigators, and everyone's heart could not help but feel despair and panic. Keep your spirits up. Seeing that the ghoul investigators were looking at Dustless in shock, Washu Matsushi, as the director, suddenly waved his arm. Everyone, don't forget your mission. Behind us is the entire Tokyo. We must not let this group of evil ghouls take a step forward. Otherwise, the unlucky ones will be the ordinary citizens who have no strength, including your wives and children. It had to be said that although Washu Matsushi was a wolf in human skin, his ability to fool people was not simple. After all, he had been the director for many years, and he was good at talking. Yes, behind us is the entire Tokyo. There is no way to retreat. Many investigators who were encouraged regained their confidence and looked at the ghouls who were addicted to killing. As Washu Matsushi said, even if they were for their families, they were determined not to retreat. What should I say? A bunch of ignorant idiots. They don't even know that they've been used. The officers who noticed that the ghouls were all indignant, and everyone's heart was full of righteous anger. Dustless smiled and said nothing. If the enemy of the ghoul investigator is really a ghoul, then the first person to be destroyed by this group of people should be Washimatsuri. Although Washimatsuri was the director of CCG, his real identity was a ghoul. Humph, have you surrendered? Finding that Dustless was standing safely, Washimatsuri also breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time said righteously, "Justice will never lose to you evil ghouls." Poochie! Hearing this, Dustless could not help but laugh out loud. His expression was extremely exaggerated, as if he had encountered the funniest joke in the world. "Bastard, you are just a ghoul. How dare you be so arrogant?" Seeing this, Washimatsuri's face was red, and he stared at Dustless with a fake smile. You garbage are not qualified to live in the world, and you are not qualified to breathe under the sun. It's funny, do you have the qualification to talk about others? Looking directly at Washimatsuri's eyes, Dustless sneered, "What should I call you? People from the organization, or Mr. Mustard? To be honest, you really have a lot of identities, or is it more appropriate to call you a ghoul? Mr. Director of CCD." Hearing this, Washimatsuri was unmoved on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. He couldn't help but think, how does this guy know my identity? Which bastard betrayed me? You must kill him. His heart was like this, but Washimatsuri sneered and denied. Vulgar, are you really an SSS class ghoul? You even use this ridiculous trick, it's really funny. Yes, how can the director be a ghoul? What nonsense. The ghouls who heard this also looked at Dustless with an idiotic face. Washimatsuri had been the director of CCG for many years, and he usually maintained gentleness and friendliness. How could he be a ghoul that everyone wanted to kill? A group of hopeless idiots. Seeing this, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. His whole body was covered with bright light, and he turned into a rainbow and rushed out. Phew! The straight flash was unstoppable, and it rushed straight to Washimatsuri. The speed was so fast that when others reacted, Dustless had almost disappeared, and no one could keep up with his speed. "Stop him, this guy wants to hurt Director Washu." CCG's minions quickly shouted loudly, and just at this time, a graceful figure resolutely blocked in front of Washimatsuri. This person had golden hair, and her facial features were quite delicate and perfect. Her well-proportioned pretty face was evenly distributed. No matter from which direction, the face could be called a beautiful little face. Finally, a beautiful woman came out. Finding that this woman blocked his way, Dustless's body turned into a real body. Although there were many women around him, such as Takatsuki-sen and Kirishima Tuka, they were all ghouls. Thinking of their ferocious appearance of eating humans, Dustless could not help but tremble strangely. Therefore, seeing a human woman and a very familiar woman, Dustless felt quite familiar. Mado Akira? Take advantage of the fact that I haven't lost interest in you and leave quickly. Otherwise, waving the light sword in his hand, Wu Chen's voice was incomparably cold. The number of beautiful women that have been killed by me isn't a small number. Chapter 2035. Are you Mado Akira? Quickly leave before I lose interest in you. Otherwise, waving the light sword in his hand, Wu Chen's voice was incomparably cold. The number of beautiful women that have been killed by me isn't a small number. This was not Dustless's alarmist words. The number of women who died in his hands was not few. It's incredible. Unexpectedly, Mado Akira did not appreciate it. She took the unique Kun-ku to guard against Dustless and sneered. Even ghouls know how to be gentle to humans. This era is changing really fast. But with all due respect, your pity makes me unable to be happy. You don't know what's good for you. Hearing this, Dustless's face was slightly cold and immediately swooped out. He did not even look at her. He just looked at Washimatsuri behind Mado Akira. This guy was the culprit. If he defeated him, everything will collapse, CCG will naturally collapse and end. You want to die? Seeing Dustless ignoring her existence, Mato Akira was ashamed and angry. Being ignored by a mere ghoul was a big blow to her. Under the irrigation of anger, Mato Akira swung Kuin-ku, which was like a long whip, swept from the side and went straight to Dustless's cheek. It's just a cheap attack. Unexpectedly, Dustless just glanced at Mato Akira and grabbed Kuin-ku with his left hand. Hey, do you think your hand is made of steel? Seeing this, Mato Akira sneered. Her Kuin-ku was covered with a lot of thorns and barbs. If he grabbed it, his hands would inevitably be bloody. Boom! A dull noise fell. Dustless suddenly grabbed the bloody red Kuin-ku with his bare hands. Idiot! Mato Akira was overjoyed. Seeing Dustless grab her Kuin-ku, she said sarcastically, "Hey, is your hand?" Mato Akira's eyes were fixed on Dustless's left hand. She was shocked to find that even though he was holding on to Kuin's barbs, he was still safe and sound. Dustless's hand was not as badly mutilated as imagined. His white little hand was like carved jade, more beautiful and perfect than Mato Akira's skin. How is this possible? Mato Akira's eyes widened, and her flustered tone carried endless shock. Kakaka. Dustless only used a little force, and Kuin-ku collapsed in an instant. The child's play is over. Go back to where you came from. There is a generation gap between the world of adults and the world of children. Passing by Mato Akira's side, Dustless only left a cold tone, and then slowly walked to Washu Matsuri. Looking at Mato Akira, Washu Matsuri's face twitched. Men, quickly get rid of this villain for me. Looking around, Washu Matsuri called the investigators around him to come to support. He was helpless to the extreme, and he couldn't say anything. If no one was here, Yashitsugu could still free himself as a gesture, but if someone was here, wouldn't that be a blatant death wish? How can he be the director in the future? Stop him. Don't let him get close to the director. Damn ghoul. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands, let's kill him together. Listening to Washu Matsuri's cry for help, the investigators abandoned their opponents and came from all directions to support. All of them looked at Dustless angrily. Since you want to die, I will not be polite. Chakra in the body spread out, Dustless's murderous aura swelled to an unstoppable degree, and within hundreds of meters, it was full of oppression. Super Shinra Tensei. The violent chakra broke out of the body, and the place 20 meters away from Dustless was hit by a terrifying attack. Boom boom boom. The vibration like a natural disaster suddenly came, an invisible force, annihilated and flattened together. The surface within 100 meters was cut into a deep pit, dust and smoke drifted, as if it was the end of the world. Not only the investigators, but also the ghouls who fought with them were affected, and they were not willing to be obliterated in an instant. On the ground, there was a deep pit with a radius of 100 meters, which was as terrible as being hit by a meteorite from outer space. Are you crazy? Takatsuki-sen was stunned. Looking at Dustless like a machine, she was shocked. Crazy? Glancing at Takatsuki-sen, Dustless slowly said, "Girl, I said before, in my eyes, no matter ghouls and humans, they are the same creatures, but they only have a unified name, ants." Hearing the words, Takatsuki-sen was silent. Looking at Dustless with some scruples, she suddenly realized that she followed a moody, hungry wolf. Are they all dead? Mato Akira was also stunned. She was close to Dustless, and she was not in the attack range of Super Shinra Tensei, so she escaped the disaster. Haha. At this time, a crazy voice suddenly sounded. Following the source, Washimatsushi, who usually looked elegant and warm, unexpectedly had a crazy smile. This was not the most important thing. His eyes, which originally belonged to human beings, had become the kaku eyes of ghouls at the moment. Hey, old fox, are you finally not going to hide? Dustless scornfully questioned. The fox will eventually show its tail. It was just a matter of time. Director, you are really a ghoul. Mato Akira was also shocked to stare at Washimatsushi, the unique kaku eyes of ghouls, and the blood-red kagun behind, were obviously something that only ghouls had. Chapter 2036. As you can see. The gloomy laughter came out from Kazu Matsushi's throat. There was a strange smile on his mouth, and his terrifying eyes stared at Dustless and Mato Akira. This guy. Takatsuki-san stared at Kazu Matsushi cautiously. The violent, destructive breath was obviously not something that could be faked casually. I said before that CCG is just a place to hide the evil. The essence of V organization is CCG. Looking at the dull Mato Akira with pity, he pointed to the store manager Yoshimura Kozen on the other side and said, "That old man, he had a deal with Kazu Matsushi a long time ago. In fact, your CCG director has a very famous name in organization, Kasasako-san. You know very much." Hearing this, Kazu Matsushi also admitted frankly. Anyway, most of the ghouls' investigators were killed. Only the people who were not covered by Super Shinra Tensei were still alive, and he would kill them later. You took the initiative to release the state of ghouls. This situation is really rare, Kasasako-san. The store manager Yoshimura Kozen, who was bleeding, looked tired. He just fought with Takatsuki-san, and he also worked hard. There were many scars on his body. Although they were father and daughter, Takatsuki-san's attack was more ruthless than seeing her enemy. Kazu Matsushi just waved his hand and said, "Kozen, we are old friends who have cooperated for many years. Why don't we work together to kill this group of people? In this way, I can let bygones be bygones. You can still live safely in the future. No one in CCG will trouble you, including V organization. We just want to keep a balance. But now this group of people in Aojirai tree tore up this hard-won precious piece, so we can only destroy them." Kazu Matsushi said his chips. His eyes were shining. He seemed to be sure that Yoshimura Kozen would agree to his conditions. Balance. Takatsuki-sen's face showed a strong, stunned color, looking at Kazu Matsushi blankly. Seeing the gloomy smile on his face, she felt a little depressed. The so-called balance is actually very simple. Looking at the confused Takatsuki-sen, Dustless sorted out his thoughts and explained, "If all the rats die, the cats will lose their jobs. If all the ghouls disappear, then does CCG still have the meaning to continue to exist?" "I see." Takatsuki-sen nodded suddenly. In a sense, it was true. "You're very smart." Looking at Dustless in surprise, Washu Matsuri suddenly became interested. He rolled his eyes and couldn't help but say, "How about this? If you join our V organization, your position in the future will definitely." What a joke! However, Dustless didn't give Washu Matsuri a chance to continue his nonsense. He interrupted him and said disdainfully, "Idiot, haven't you heard of the saying that dragons don't live with snakes? You're courting death." Hearing this, Washu Matsushi was furious. His whole body was covered with a burst of fiery red flowing light as he rushed over. Boom, boom, boom. The violent wind and waves were extremely violent. The flat ground was blown up with dust and smoke. More than 10 meters away, they could feel the violent breath of Washu Matsuri. This guy. I didn't expect him to be a powerful SSS class ghoul. Takatsuki-sen was stunned. At this moment, she suddenly felt that the SSS class ghoul was becoming more and more worthless. Takatsuki-sen's father, Yoshimura Gyozen, was an SSS class ghoul. Arima Kisho's strength was also SSS class. At present, Washu Matsuri's strength seemed to be SSS class. In fact, it was worth mentioning that there was a very abnormal character in CCG, Odo Nifoku. This person later played an overwhelming strength to crush Takatsuki Senator. He almost didn't have the power to fight back. His strength was far beyond the SSS class. Go to hell! Noticing that Dustless had not yet realized his existence, Washu Matsuri suddenly disdainfully curled his mouth. A large number of kagun on his back were like a big knife cutting towards Dustless. Still standing still, that's a SSS class ghoul. Do you think he is the same as the previous garbage? Seeing that Dustless was still standing still, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Some even believed that Dustless would die this time. Although Dustless's strength was SSS class, the opponent's strength was obviously SSS class, and Washimatsuri hid so deeply. Maybe his strength was more than SSS class. Damn guy, he actually looks down on me. Seeing that Dustless still kept calm, CCG's director Washimatsuri was angry and shouted, "Just an SSS class ghoul, don't be too self-righteous." It had to be said that as a member of the V organization, Washimatsuri did have the capital to be arrogant. For this huge organization, SSS class ghouls were nothing. Yoshimura Gazen was an SSS class ghoul, but he was just a cleaner of the V organization. His daughter Takatsuki-san was also an SSS class ghoul, but she was beaten by Odo Nifoku, who was a member of the V organization. It was worth mentioning that Arima Kisho was actually a member of the V organization, and his strength was also slightly stronger than Takatsuki Sr. This is such a big misunderstanding. Seeing that the Kagun was about to penetrate Dustless's head, Dustless suddenly turned his head, his cold voice blended into the void and finally passed into everyone's ears. "I have never said that I am an SSS class ghoul." Chapter 2037. From the beginning to the end, Dustless had never admitted that he was an SSS class, even the identity of ghoul had never been admitted. This was all pushed up by CCG. From the beginning to the end, Dustless had never admitted that he was an SSS class ghoul. "No matter what you are, go to hell now." Washimatsuri flew into a rage out of humiliation. The Kagun on his back swarmed in from all directions and was about to pierce and crush Wuchen. The sharpness of the Kagun made people shudder. Grew. Not to mention other people, even Takatsuki-sen, who was an SSS class ghoul, also felt the power of lingering fear. An old fox like Washimatsuri, who had been hiding for many years, and also had an extraordinary position in the V organization, how weak can he be? Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The saw-like Kagun penetrated Dustless's body and cut him into several halves. Useless thing. Seeing this, Washimatsuri disdainfully curled his lips. His face was full of ridicule, and he sneered, "What SSS class ghoul? Your strength is so weak, even Gongshan is not as good as you. I tried to win you over before, it's really a mistake." In the face of such an incredible scene, everyone was somewhat overwhelmed. Everyone did not expect that Dustless would be killed so easily, and there was no room for him to fight back. "Next, it's you." Washimatsuri looked at Takatsuki-sen and others coldly. Even if the other party was an SSS class ghoul, he was not afraid. In this world, it was not that SSS class ghouls were invincible. What is your choice? Continue to cooperate with me or go with them? The terrifying eyes fell on Gongshan's head. Washimatsuri asked coldly, "Heaven and hell are between your thoughts. Think twice before you act." It sounded very respectful to friends, but Washimatsuri's tone revealed endless threats. Obviously, as long as Gongshan chose to join Tatsuki-sen's side, he would kill him. However, the latter was just silent. The store manager just closed his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking. If that's the case, then all of you can die together. Seeing that the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was so unappreciative, Washimatsuri's eyes were full of anger. He stared at Tatsuki-sen and Yoshimura Gyozen. When he was about to rush out at full speed, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Puchi! The horrifying sound of a body being cut into pieces suddenly came. After Washimatsuri was stunned, he asked in surprise, "Who was killed?" "It's you. You idiot!" Suddenly, the voice of the person who was supposed to be dead came from behind, and Washimatsuri broke out in a cold sweat. "You? Why didn't you die?" Washimatsuri hurriedly turned his head to take a look. What entered his eyes was a smiling Wuchen. "Damn it, when did they do it? Why don't I feel anything?" Washimatsuri looked at the wound on his abdomen and his face twitched. "When did they do it?" Not only Washimatsuri was surprised, but even other people were stunned, staring at the scene in front of them inconceivably. Everyone's cheeks were full of puzzlement. One had to understand that this group of peerless experts, did not even see how Dustless attacked. You didn't die? Something is wrong. I obviously smashed your body. Why did you come back from the dead? Since when did ghouls have such incredible recovery power? Washu Matsushi's pupils suddenly congealed, and his face was full of shock. He had just seen with his own eyes that Wu Chen was cut into 8 pieces, and the person who sent Wu Chen to his death was Washu Matsushi himself. Now this guy came back from the dead. How could Washu Matsuri not be surprised? Hearing this, Dustless only looked at Heshu Matsuri with a face full of sympathy. He said coldly, "You want to kill me? Child, just how childish are you? Did you graduate from kindergarten? You're really stupid." To put it simply, it was just the element of glinting fruit. It was a pity that Washu Matsuri was too stupid. He naively thought that he killed Dustless. It was ridiculous and ignorant. What did you say? Believe it or not, Washu Matsushi's face turned ashen from Dustless's words, but he had nothing to say. What Dustless said was an out-and-out fact. It's best not to be too arrogant. While repairing the body, Washu Matsuri delayed the time. The more arrogant people are, the faster they die. The recovery power of ghouls was quite amazing, especially Washu Matsuri, who was one of the best. Is it? Dustless heard the words, and his face was cold. When he heard Washu Matsuri's threatening tone, he suddenly wanted to kill him. He hated people who threatened him the most in his life. Especially now, Washu Matsuri, obviously, he caught the turtle in the jar, but he had to put on a confident look, which looked really disgusting and made people sick. Wasn't this asking for a beating? Obviously, the situation was extremely unfavorable to Washu Matsuri, but this old guy still wanted to die. He deserved to be beaten. Not good. I angered him. Washu Matsuri, who had been observing the change of Dustless's expression, saw the horrible face, covered with a layer of cold frost. Washu Matsuri regretted, and then a dazzling light fell from the sky, crushing Washu Matsuri's body in one fell swoop. Puchi. The ferocious knife was merciless. It cut through all the thistles and thorns and simply cut off Washu Matsuri's right arm. His whole body was lying on the ground and rolling in pain. His ears were still reverberating with Wu Chen's scornful laughter. I want to ask, I'm arrogant, what can you do to me? Chapter 2038. Damn it, my hand. Washu Matsushi cried bitterly, rolling like a madman. He was in great pain. In terms of the resilience of ghouls, especially powerful SSS ghouls like Washu Matsushi, being cut off an arm will not affect their fighting power at all. Because if necessary, they can have another one. This kind of small thing is just a piece of cake. Hey, how do you feel? It's amazing, isn't it? Director Washu Matsushi, why don't you grow another arm? The recovery ability of ghouls is very strong. Let me see your regeneration ability. Dustless stared at Washu Matsushi with a deep face. His meaningful tone obviously had something to say. What does Dustless mean? Takatsuki-sen and the store manager Yoshimura-kusen looked at Dustless with confusion, staring at the ferocious cheeks, and looking at the pain on Washu Matsushi's face. They suddenly understood that this thing was more complicated than they thought. What did he do? Takatsuki-sen and Yoshimura-kusen were confused, and then looked at Washu Matsushi strangely. This guy waited for a long time, but he did not grow a new arm. Instead, because of the pain in a certain position, his cheeks were distorted and cold. Combined with the terrible eyes of ghouls, Washu Matsushi was like a ghost. What the hell is that? Fire? After all, they were not ordinary people. Staring at the place where Washu Matsushi's arm was cut off for a long time, the father and daughter understood why Washu Matsushi was so painful. Looking carefully, the place where the arm was directly cut off by Dustless was burning with a small flame. Black flame? Yoshimura-kusen was shocked. The black flame was like a willow branch, floating with the wind, and may be extinguished at any time. But what was intriguing was that even if Washu Matsushi used his kagun to beat the black flame, he could not blow it out. Instead, his kagun would also be affected and burned with the black flame. This is Washu Matsuri. Dustless actually used such a cruel trick on him. Takatsuki-san suddenly understood. She had been Dustless's follower for a while. She knew that this was a trick called Amaterasu, and it could not be extinguished. If an ordinary person touched it, they would be affected. Damn it, this damned bastard. Washimatsushi cursed Wu Chen in his heart. He wanted to skin this guy alive. He glared at Wu Chen with hatred. Blood was already flowing out of his eyes. Washimatsushi knew that Wu Chen was torturing him on purpose. He wanted to be burned slowly by the Tensho. His life was worse than death. Wu Chen's actions were probably revenge for what happened just now. Tsuke, you're already at this stage, yet you still have such a murderous expression? Dustless looked at the crazy Washimatsuri, feeling bored. He gradually lost interest in this guy. It's about time to send you on your way. Don't miss me in heaven. Don't even think about it. Hearing this, Washimatsushi's eyes regained the light of survival. If there was still a thought supporting Washimatsushi to accept the slow burning of Amaterasu, then it was to live. It was better to live than to die, such a simple truth was known by the world. I can't give up. Looking at the burning flame on his body, Washimatsushi gritted his teeth. Like a storm cutting through the sky, he disappeared in an instant. The speed is really fast, I can only see a blurry afterimage. Looking up at the gradually disappearing Washimatsushi, Dustless lazily raised his right foot and said, "But, how fast is your speed? Can you be faster than light?" Light speed kick. The light with the majestic destructive power, like a long tail, automatically followed Washimatsushi and approached Washimatsushi in an instant. Damn it! Feeling the dangerous fluctuation behind him, Washimatsushi turned his head and looked. The dazzling golden light swallowed his whole body. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion suddenly rang out, and a mushroom cloud of boiling flames swept across the void. The blazing high temperature caused white steam to rise from the sky. As for Washimatsushi, he didn't even feel anything, he was evaporated by a kick. It was because he was too weak, so he was slaughtered on the spot without resistance. He didn't even feel the pain when he was kicked by Dustless. Mustard, the object of the transaction for many years, was slaughtered. Yoshimura-gakusen was somewhat sad, the whole face drooped. It seemed that he was remembering the death of Washimatsushi. Store manager, I suddenly feel the air is disgusting. Do you know why? Looking at Yoshimura-gakusen with a teasing face, Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon. It's because of your disgusting kindness. Ghouls were originally the incarnation of evil. The store manager Yoshimura-gakusen himself said that when ghouls were born, it meant that the beginning of evil had been pulled up, and if they wanted to live, they must eat humans. Therefore, every surviving perennial ghoul had human blood and fed on human flesh. Especially the SSS class store manager was one of the best. Izumi, his sight fell on Tsuki-san, who had a cold temperament. Dustless smiled very evilly, and said with a deep tone that was more terrible than the devil, "Kill him now, Izumi, remember not to let me down." Leaving such a sentence, Wu Chen left lazily. His twinkling eyes were brimming with brilliance, as if he was premeditated and planning a big event. As for whether Takatsuki-san would kill Yoshimura-gakusen, Dustless did not have to worry about it. Izumi hated Yoshimura-gakusen very much, especially when she saw him live so freely. She was full of hatred for the store manager. Chapter 2039. Ait, do you really want to kill me? Don't listen to this guy's slanderous words. Is he a villain, conspiring to instigate the relationship between us father and daughter? The store manager Yoshimura-kozen's face was embarrassed. Seeing Takatsuki-sen's murderous intent, he felt very uncomfortable. Old man, pay attention to your tone. Dustless frowned and looked at Yoshimura-kozen with displeasure, and seriously emphasized, "Make it clear to me, this is the last reminder, I did not instigate the relationship between you father and daughter. What Takatsuki-sen did was her own initiative. Yes, the private affairs between us have nothing to do with others." Takatsuki-sen's emerald eyes were shining, staring at the store manager Yoshimura-kozen. Her fists were clenched, she seemed to remember the miserable life in the past. The whole person's cheeks were covered with a layer of darkness like the night sky. The resentment between the father and daughter is really big. Dustless saw this and secretly smacked his tongue. The private affairs between other people's father and daughter, he was not good to intervene and meddle in other people's business. The overall reason was because of the ruthless abandonment of the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, which caused Takatsuki-san to suffer a lot in her childhood. Later, Takatsuki-san, who grew up in suffering, found that the store manager lived in happiness. Under the contrast, there was hatred. Why did Takatsuki-san sell the store manager's information to CCG? The fundamental reason was that she hated the store manager. "Sin, quickly clean up this old man, and then come to me." After a while, Dustless casually said a greeting, and suddenly left with his hands in his pockets. "Where are you going? Don't you plan to continue to destroy CCG?" Dustless suddenly planned to retreat. Both Takatsuki-sen and the store manager Yoshimura Kozen did not expect it, and their eyes stared straight at the back of Dustless. "The things that should be destroyed have been destroyed. Right, Sin? Remember to spread the things about Washimatsushi. We must let everyone in Tokyo understand that the director of CC Washimatsushi, he is a ghoul." Wu Chun paused and instructed Yishiwen. Then he began to move again. But Lord Dustless. At the same time, other members of Aogiri Tree caught up, and some of them said unwillingly, "CCG is about to be defeated by us. Is it really okay to let them go?" The person who spoke was Jason, who had been beaten up by Dustless previously. At this moment he had obediently become Dustless's lackey. "Idiot." Unexpectedly, Dustless just snorted and said disdainfully, "Annihilate C. Who told you this? Just because of the death of a director, some small fries, and a special investigator, you think we defeated CCG? Stop this kind of ridiculous talk in the future. CCG, no, it should be said that the power of the organization is bigger than you think. What we have destroyed now is only the tip of the iceberg. After all, the director of CCG and Shuji Matsuri were just a clown. For example, Arima Kisho of V organization, and powerful characters such as Odo and Erfuku had not appeared yet. In addition, there was a special organization, Clown, such as the people in it, and other ghouls were still hidden in the dark and had never appeared. Staring at Dustless's back, Takatsuki-san did not understand what he wanted to do. "Where are you going now? And our previous plan, isn't it to annihilate CCG? Since we have only cleared a part of their power, it means that if we want to completely annihilate CCG's White Dove, we must. Do we have to kill all humans?" Without giving Takatsuki-sen the opportunity to continue speaking, Dustless directly interrupted her, and couldn't help but sigh. "Sen, haven't you figured it out yet? The direction of this war, no matter what the final result is, ghouls will lose." "Impossible." Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen shook her head resolutely and said, "Annihilate all CCG. If the world is ruled by ghouls, it will be our great victory." Ridiculous. However, before Dustless taught Takatsuki-sen a lesson, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen said seriously, Such a fantasy plan is impossible, you must." Phew. Takatsuki-sen was obviously not interested in listening to the store manager's nonsense, and her huge white arm went straight to him. Boom. It happened suddenly. The store manager Yoshimura Gyozen did not expect it, and he did not defend in time. The moment the huge palm hit him, the store manager's body trembled fiercely, and he was directly slapped and flew out. Although the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was SSS class ghouls, and they were all one-eyed owls, Takatsuki-sen's strength was obviously more than the store manager who was also SSS class. In the original story, the store manager Yoshimura Gyozen was besieged by several special ghouls investigators, and it ended in a fiasco. Even if Takatsuki-sen didn't save the scene in time, he might have been made into kunk. My meaning is very simple. Taking a deep breath, Dustless said bluntly, "Even if I help ghouls to destroy all human beings, ghouls will eventually be doomed to become losers." "This is also right. What are you going to do?" Takatsuki-sen was silent for a while and then nodded. "If human beings are extinct, what can ghouls use to satisfy their hunger? The final result may only be starvation in vain. In fact, the way is very simple. He bowed his head and pondered for a while, and suddenly remembered the transformed one-eyed ghoul, Kaneki Ken, in his mind. Dustless explained, if all the ghouls are transformed into human beings, this problem will be solved. The key to the problem of ghouls must be a crucial person, Jana, my hero. This person can transform Kaneki Ken into a ghoul, and may have the hope to transform ghouls into humans. Chapter 2040. As for the harmony mentioned by the store manager Yoshimura Kozen, it was completely a dream. Ghouls needed the delicious food of human flesh to survive. Just like water and fire, these two completely opposite attributes could never coexist. Transform ghouls into humans? Tetsuki-sen's eyes were bright when she heard the words. The relationship between humans and ghouls must have no flaws, but then she thought of the harsh conditions and smiled bitterly. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. If it can be done, maybe the ghouls in this world have already disappeared, and no one is willing to live under others' supercilious eyes. Just like Kaneki Ken, if he can continue to be a human, will he choose to become a ghoul? Is there any other way? Tetsuki-sen looked at Dustless with expectation, pursed her lips, and her eyes were full of desire. In her cognition, Dustless belonged to the omnipotent type. Of course there is. Dustless smiled strangely and immediately said gloomily, for example, if I destroy all the creatures on this planet from then on, the world will return to peace, and there will be no disputes. Right, by the way, I am best at how to destroy a planet. This could be considered as an extreme form of harmony. If everyone was dead, would there still be chaos? Hearing the words, Takatsuki-sen's spirit was refreshed, and her eyes stared at Dustless. Although the arc of the mouth slightly raised looked like a boring joke, Takatsuki-sen felt an inexplicable huge pressure. It seemed that the man in front of her often did such cruel things as destruction, which made Takatsuki-sen's heart inevitably covered with a layer of dark clouds. Did you see it? This guy is a crazy person. After clearing his throat, the store manager Yoshimura Kozen said, Dustless is definitely not a good guy. 8. Don't make a mistake. Pumph. Takatsuki-sen sneered after hearing the words, and immediately sneered with hatred. Is it? Then he is countless times better than some scumbags who abandon their children. Hee. Upon seeing this, Dustless could only laugh dryly before leaving decisively. Hurry up and get rid of this old man. Kwang? He's too much of an eyesore. What kind of species is this kid? Is there such a powerful existence? It can even emit light. In the laboratory of Garner Ming-bo, through the monitoring screen, Dustless crushed the SSS-class ghouls and destroyed everything. No one could defeat him. He was a godlike existence. Let's ask, can humans emit light? Obviously not. This kind of thing was far beyond the normal laws of physics. No one in the world could do it. Tokyo isn't safe anymore. We have to change locations. That damned Dustless. Jana, my hero, couldn't help but curse again and again. Because of Dustless, the entire Tokyo was now in an unprecedented chaos, becoming a hell for humans and a heaven for ghouls. The so-called CCG, in front of Dustless, was completely as fragile as an ant. It was even not polite to say that Dustless just moved a little and easily killed CCG. He did not need the help of other ghouls, it was just a simple foil. In addition, the rest of the ghouls had no other special highlights. The ghoul called Kamishiro Rise must also be taken away. She is my important experimental subject. Thinking of the importance of Kamishiro Rise, Garner Ming-bo walked to the depths of the laboratory. It was a bottomless corridor, gloomy, the focus of the road seemed to lead to hell, and the miserable screams could be heard. The depths of the corridor led to the abandoned warehouse, and the heavy iron door was locked tightly by a giant lock. This was the place where Kamishiro Rise was imprisoned. Go away, damned ghoul. Through the gap between the iron door, the panicked screams came from the warehouse. Kamishiro Rise was a genuine ghoul. If they wanted to keep her in captivity, they naturally needed something like human flesh. This guy's nickname, Gluttony, is really not for nothing. Outside the iron door, hearing the screams, Garner Ming-bo sighed. In order to use Kamishiro Rise to live, he naturally had to prepare the necessary human flesh. Take this guy away as soon as possible. With a decision in his heart, Garner Ming Bo took out the key in his clothes. When he was about to open the lock, a gust of cold wind suddenly came in the dark corridor. Whoosh! The piercing cold wind lingered, as if it came from the depths of hell, making people shudder, but perhaps because of a long habit, Garner Ming Bo had been used to it. Is it Odo? Without turning his head, Garner Ming Bo just complained. That damned dustless is too powerful. We must temporarily transfer the laboratory location, otherwise, we will be eradicated like the group of CCG. Odo Urfu was Garner Ming Bo's assistant, and he was also the mastermind of the last plot against Kamishiro Rise. Are you so afraid of me? By the way, where is Odo Urfu? If you're so afraid of me, you probably won't listen to me, right? Why don't I just kill you? What do you think, Dr. Garner? A discordant tone suddenly resounded from behind him, lazily carrying undisguised ridicule. If you're so afraid of me, you probably won't listen to me, right? The scarlet Sharingan jumped with cold light, and Garner Ming Bo felt a chill down his spine. It's you. Turning his head to take a look, what entered his eyes was the calm and collected Dustless. Jana Mingbo's old face twitched fiercely, and he screamed out loud in a daze, "It's you, Dustless?" Chapter 2041. After discovering that Dustless had appeared, Jana Mingbo suddenly felt that he had become the prey of the Grim Reaper. Gulu! In the face of death, any creature only had one simple emotion, fear. Especially Jana Mingbo, he still had so many experiments to complete, and now he was going to die. How could he be willing to accept his fate? His heart was naturally full of panic. Once this person panicked, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. The current Jana Mingbo was like this. There is no need to be so nervous. I am not a ghoul. I will not eat you. Dustless patted Jana Mingbo's shoulder, with dimples on his cheeks. He looked very amiable, but in the eyes of Jana Mingbo, he was like a smiling tiger. He did not know when he would give you a big bite. Your Excellency, what are you looking for me for? Dustless's mouth said lightly, but Jana Mingbo did not dare to believe it. Some people who were stronger sometimes turn their backs on others. Of course, I am looking for you to work. Dustless looked at Jana Mingbo seriously and came truthfully. Work? Jana Mingbo's tone had a hint of obvious bullying, and he looked quite surprised. Hey, do you feel surprised? Dustless smiled and looked at the shocked Jana Mingbo, and said to himself, this is normal. You may think that your family's ancestral grave is smoking. Ha! Jana Mingbo was confused by this inexplicable words, and immediately bowed his head to ponder, and finally understood what Dustless meant. Our family's ancestral grave is smoking? It should be emitting black smoke, right? Otherwise, how could a fiend like you find me? Jana Mingbo complained in his heart, but his mouth was full of flattery. He did not have the capital to fight against Dustless. People under the eaves, sometimes bowing down was necessary. I heard that you transformed Kaneki Ken into a ghoul, right? Dustless glanced at the bloody iron door, and then heard the sick voice, and then through the narrow gap in the iron door, he already knew who was locked in it. It is indeed successful, although the probability is so small that it is negligible, but as you can see, Kaneki Ken is a successful test product. Jana Mingbo directly admitted he did not dare to hide anything. After all, his life was still in the hands of Dustless. Kaneki Ken is just a success? Glancing at Jana Mingbo, Dustless understood that he had an experimental assistant, called Urfu, who once crushed Takatsuki. So the successful product you said is Urfu? Speaking of which, where did old Duo and Erfu go? I remember that his identity is very complicated. Looking around, Wuchen didn't find any trace of old Duo Erfu. That kid? Hearing that Dustless called Urfu as that kid, Jana Mingbo was speechless. Odo Urfu was also a ghoul, and he was also one-eyed. His strength was strong enough to easily defeat the SSS-class ghouls. This person was transformed by Jana My Hero, and his strength was also extremely terrifying. In the future, he will crush Takatuki-sen without any effort. I am talking about Urfu. I remember that the kid's identity is messy, and he seems to have a relationship with every large organization. For example, Urfu was a member of the clown organization, and at the same time, he kept a secret contact with Bronze 4. Not only that, Urfu was a first-class ghoul investigator, and he was also a member of the V organization. His identity was complicated and unprecedented. I don't know where Urfu went. Hearing this, Jana Mingbo just sighed. If Urfu was here, he could protect him. The person who was caught must be Dustless. Well, that kid ran fast. Wu Chen could only sigh sorrowfully at this elusive old duo Erfu. It was as if he was blaming God for not letting him meet old duo Erfu. Right? Are you willing to work for me? With enough patience, Dustless sat calmly and said slowly, "Of course, you can refuse." Hearing this, Jana Mingbo smiled embarrassedly on the surface and said respectfully, "It's my fortune to be chosen by Lord Wu Chen. You just said that there's smoke rising from my ancestral grave. Why would I refuse?" His mouth picked up some nice words, but in his heart, Jana Mingbo was cursing Dustless for being shameless. He scolded him until he was completely covered in wounds. It sounded nice, but did he have the capital to refuse? Jana Mingbo was sure that once he said the word no, he would be broken into pieces by Dustless, or he would simply take some tough measures to threaten him. "Open the door lock." Hearing Jana Mingbo's answer, Dustless had a satisfied smile on his face. Then he pointed to the abandoned heavy iron door. "The one locked inside should be Kamishiro Rise, right? Let's use her as a test subject. I think it's just right." "My lord is right." Jana Mingbo just continued to flatter him, but in his heart, he was vomiting blood helplessly. Urfu was not here, and he did not belong to the kind of combat personnel. Compromising Dustless was necessary, unless Jana Mingbo wanted to die. After about 10 seconds, Jana Mingbo finally used the key to open the iron chain. After falling to the ground, there was a muffled explosion. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The moment the iron door was opened, the purple-haired girl pounced over like a hurricane. Her thick red kagun swayed, and a sick and crazy smile hung on her delicate face. Who else could it be other than Kamishiro Rise? Chapter 2042. TSK, we've just met, and you want to die? Your temper is as impatient as before. Seeing the incoming shadow, although it was as fast as lightning in Jana Mingbo's eyes, it was as slow as a tortoise when it came to Dustless. No matter how fast any creature is, can it be faster than light? Therefore, to Dustless, the speed of any species is negligible compared to him, and the speed that he is proud of cannot withstand a single blow. Retreat. Thinking of the danger of Kamishiro Rise, Jana Mingbo turned around and ran. The reason why he dared to approach her in the past was because there was the restriction of the heaven-defying existence, Jana Mingbo. No matter how powerful Kamishiro Rise was, she did not dare to act rashly. However, even though the current Dustless was very strong, who knew whether or not he would protect Jana Mingbo? You don't know when to retreat. Glancing at the scarlet evil eye, Dustless's body erupted with violent power fluctuations. Ka. The ground burst open with a bang, and the messy cracks were like weeds that grew randomly. They were everywhere, and the air in the abandoned warehouse was oppressive. Boom boom boom. After a few seconds of silence, the entire warehouse began to shake. What's going on? Is there an earthquake? Seeing that the Kagun was about to pierce through Jana Mingbo, Kamishiro Rise's body actually crawled down, and the Kagun that was shot out had to stop. I haven't seen you for a while, but your wild nature still hasn't changed. You're still as violent as before, Kenzaki-san. A lazy voice came, and Kamishiro Rise subconsciously raised her eyes and glanced over. It was the most disgusting and most fearful handsome face, looking at Dustless in fear. On this mysterious man, she once again felt the insignificance of being an ant. Why are you here? Staring at Dustless, Kamishiro Rise said in annoyance, Isn't this the territory of Jana Mingbo and Jana Mingbo? Why would an outsider appear here? The times will change, and the owner of this place will naturally change. Kenzuki-san's thoughts are too stubborn. Dustless said slowly. Could it be? Hearing this, Kaneshiro Rise's expression suddenly changed. Looking at Jana Mingbo, he suddenly understood something. Jana Mingbo submitted to you? This has nothing to do with me. Kamishiro Rise said coldly. She knew that the monstrous aura just now came from Dustless, but she knew Dustless's nature. No matter what, she couldn't compromise. This is a matter of principle. Jana Mingbo is Dustless's lackey, but she can't. Tsk, rebellious girls are always so flamboyant. Dustless just smiled indifferently and immediately said without any trace of politeness, "You are just Jana Mingbo's test subject. His things are my things, and you are no exception. Right now, Kamishiro Rise is just an item of mine," Dustless announced solemnly, completely ignoring Kamishiro Rise's feelings. "In your dreams." Anger appeared on her face as Kamishiro Rise loudly resisted. Boom! Unexpectedly, as soon as these words just fell, Dustless kicked Kamishiro Rise without hesitation. Kakaka! Kamishiro Rise flew back 20 or 30 meters away, her body smashed on the thick wall, and a deep crack was clearly visible. It was enough to show how heavy Dustless's kick was. This ruthless man. Kamishiro Rise fell to the ground, and there was clearly visible blood foam at the corner of her mouth. Her internal organs were still trembling. She could even be sure that if this kick kicked the S-class ghoul, maybe the ghoul would have died. "You are not qualified to resist." Suddenly there was a bright light in front of her eyes. Kamishiro Rise looked at him with her cold eyes without any emotion. She was looking at herself with a look of disdain. "Go with me obediently, don't force me to do it again," Dustless said indifferently. "You?" Kamishiro Rise glared at him, but the squirming mouth finally stopped. First, she became Jana My Hero's white mouse, and now she was stared at by the moody big bad wolf. Why was her fate so miserable? Also, put on your clothes for me, I don't want to be suspected by others of having a special hobby. Looking at the exposed skin on Kamishiro Rise's chest, Dustless threw his coat to her. Because of the kick just now, Kamishiro Rise's clothes were cracked. Special hobby? Kamishiro Rise's mouth twitched. Dustless's words showed that she had a problem, especially Dustless. This guy simply threw his clothes on her face, which was really shameful. But this guy tastes really good. No wonder it will make me hungry, and I can't help but want to eat Dustless. Kamishiro Rise instinctively sniffed the smell on Dustless's clothes, and her face showed a touch of intoxication. The faint fragrance was very elegant and very simple, especially the nose of ghouls was different from ordinary people. This kind of smell was enough for ghouls. It's not good if the smell is too strong. Looking at Dustless greedily, Kamishiro Rise muttered to herself, full of endless desire and expectation. In the past, she coveted Dustless's smell and secretly followed Dustless, but sadly, in the end, it was Kamishiro Rise who was crushed, and she was also schemed by Jana My Hero and Jana My Hero. The smell is too strong? Dustless was stunned, then turned his head and saw Kamishiro Rise holding his clothes. Her pretty face was full of infatuation, and a rare cold expression appeared. "Idiot, the smell you said is too strong is called body odor." Chapter 2043. Dustless was suddenly speechless. Everyone knew that ghouls liked human flesh, but it really made people dumbfounded that she was crazy to this point. She did not even seem to be afraid of death. "Miss Kanzaki, don't kill my patience." Wu-chan impatiently glanced at Kamishiro Rise. His face was filled with displeasure. Seeing her fiery gaze, he couldn't help but feel annoyed and disgusted. He secretly swore in his heart, "I'll treat you as a lab rat. You're really a good experimental subject." After all, the particularity of Kanzaki Rise was well known. Fuku and Kaneki Ken transplanted her organs, so both of them were different. Needless to say, Fuku's strength was enough to easily crush the SSS class ghouls. Although Kaneki Ken was more useless now, in the future, He will be an SSS class ghoul, and he will become the new one-eyed king. You'd better put away your eyes, I can kill you at any time, just like this. Dustless picked up the stone and crushed it into powder. He warned in a cold voice, "At your level, if you have to add a time limit to defeat me, it must be 1,000 years later." With Kanzuki Rise's current level, she may be able to defeat Dustless after practicing for 1,000 years. Of course, the main reason was whether she could live for such a long time. This bastard. Seeing Wu Chen's cold eyes, Kaneshiro Rise felt defeated and cursed inwardly. This man has a heart of stone. Could it be that he's made of iron? He doesn't know how to be gentle with women. Stupid. In a trance, it seemed that he had seen through Kanzuki Rise's thoughts. Dustless suddenly sneered, "You are so vulgar. Don't think too highly of yourself, you are just a ghoul." Keeping a ghoul who liked to eat human flesh by his side, only an idiot would do this, so Kanzuki Rise was still suitable to be a white mouse for Jana Mingbo. "You bastard." When she heard the words, Kanzuki Rise's pretty face turned green and white, killing intent burst out, and the gem-like exquisite beautiful eyes burned with anger. "Are you looking down on me?" "I just looked down on you, so what? Haven't you figured out your identity? Do you need me to remind you?" Dustless snorted coldly, then lifted her foot again. "You want me to respect you, right? That's not a problem, but that depends on how many kicks you can take. I don't mind telling you, if it weren't for the fact that you're a test subject, that kick would have killed you." This was not Dustless bragging. If he had the intention to kill Kamishiro Rise, she would have been turned into a pile of meat paste. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Not long after Dustless's voice fell, his right foot was covered in a huge light, surrounded by a destructive sharpness. This bastard. Kamishiro Rise's face fell, and her confidence plummeted. There was nothing she could do about it. The difference in strength between the two of them made her powerless in certain aspects. Even if she wanted to fight against Dustless, she did not have the extra strength to do so. Retreat. Dustless glanced at Kamishiro Rise expressionlessly before he left. Time flew by, and half a day passed quietly in a blink of an eye. Although it was only a few hours, the significance was particularly great. The situation of the entire Tokyo was rewritten, and the huge city became a paradise for ghouls and a hell for humans. On the streets and roads, there were all human corpses, and they were gnawed. Of course, the death and injury of ghouls were also great. After all, some CCG's ability was quite strong. All in all, the entire Tokyo was now a bloody river, and it became a hell on earth. Even because the sun was too hot, the corpses thrown in the sun already had a strange smell, and the smell was disgusting. As for CCG, the end was even more miserable. The entire CCG was almost completely defeated. Except for some lucky ghouls, all the people who encountered Dustless were almost destroyed. It was worth mentioning that CCG was also finished. Because of Dustless's interference, the director of CCG and Shimatsuri were ghouls. It spread to the entire Tokyo in an instant like a storm. Let's ask, if the director was a ghoul, what credibility does such a CCG have? Therefore, CCG also became the target of people's shouts, and all of them became the target of everyone's hatred. All in all, today's Tokyo was in a state of no master. CCG was not in charge, and ghouls did not rule humans. It fell into a very strange state. Most of the CCG members were complaining about this, and they hated Shimatsuri in their hearts. Of course, the members of the council were also the targets of hostility. Some people even suspected that the Shu family was secretly disguised by ghouls, which also led to the outbreak of civil strife in Tokyo. After all, the Shu family had a lot of connections in the political circle and controlled a lot of armed forces. For example, the V organization was one of them. The sudden offensive of the Aojirai tree crushed the balance that was maintained, and the members of the Shimatsuri family became the target of everyone's shouts, and they were seriously destroyed. Even some government personnel were extremely surprised to find that although there were many human beings among the members of CCG, there were also ghouls. This was not wrong about CCG. For example, Arima Kisho was a half-human ghoul, and half-human blood flowed in his body. The same was true for Otoku, but he was the same as Kaneki Ken, he was a transformed one-eyed ghoul. Chapter 2044. Life was like this. When there were no mistakes, everyone treated each other with respect, but when it came to the edge of life and death, they immediately exposed their ugly nature and began to blame CCG. For example, other members of CCG, although there were some ghouls, there were some humans who had made achievements. At this moment, they were treated as ghouls by the angry humans and became the rats that everyone wanted to beat. They all left Tokyo. On the top of the deserted high-rise, Dustless looked at the deserted city below and could not help but shake his head. Since the crisis of CCG members being ghouls broke out, the huge and prosperous Tokyo became an empty city in an instant. Most of the humans had fled, and the slow humans even wished that they could grow a pair of wings. So what about you? Do you want to stay here and kill me? Suddenly looking back, Dustless stared at the strong figure behind him and said with interest, "You are called Mado Akira, right? Are you here to seek revenge?" Looking up, the young girl with blonde hair and blue eyes was as tall as a stone pillar, motionless, and her delicate and cold cheeks were full of unquestionable determination. "I am not here to seek revenge." Mado Akira stared at Dustless with deep eyes, then gritted her teeth and said, "I am here to draw power from you. I must make those bastards pay with their blood." "Those bastards?" Hearing this, Wuchen raised his eyebrows slightly. He immediately glanced at Polo's Tokyo and couldn't help muttering in his heart, "The so-called group of bastards? Don't tell me they are the Aojirai tree?" Because of the Aojirai trees, this led to hell on earth, a heaven for ghouls. To be honest, I want to retaliate against those despicable guys of CCG. Mado Akira's words were shocking, her eyes were full of hatred, and she said with disgust, "Those despicable villains turned out to be ghouls. My father and I have been loyal to them for so many years. It turned out to be like this." Dustless suddenly understood the mentality of Mado Akira. Mado Akira respected her father very much, Mado Wusu. Mado Wusu hated ghouls very much, and he would kill them if he saw them. However, the funny thing was that CCG, which Mado Wusu was loyal to, turned out to be the biggest thief's nest. Wasn't this the biggest irony? But challenging them in your current state is the same as courting death. Dustless stared at Mado Weiwei with deep meaning and instigated her, "Don't even think about killing CCG's people in your life. To be honest, Arima Kisho and Otofoku are the strongest people above the SSS level, especially that Otofoku is the most unreliable. What can you, a superior investigator, do?" The strength of the superior investigator was good, but it was still a dream to defeat the strong person who surpassed the SSS ghoul. "That's why I came to find you." Looking straight into Dustless's eyes, Mado Wei analyzed wisely, "You should have noticed that I was following you a long time ago. The reason you didn't kill me is because I'm useful to you, right?" "You are a sensitive woman." Dustless nodded and immediately stared at Mado Wei with an evil smile. "You have to understand that you are making a deal with a demon who kills people like flies. Are you sure you want to do this?" "I have no choice." Shaking her head, Mado Wei's face was filled with determination. Her firm tone made it seem like she was dead set on it. "In this case, I just lack an experimental material. You can replace it." "Mado Akira, don't you want to wash away the shame for your father? How about I transform you into a one-eyed person first? In the gloomy laboratory. How is it?" Staring at the haggard girl on the bed, Dustless asked indifferently, "Don't let people down, Jana Mingbo." Jana Mingbo wanted to cry but had no tears. It was not easy to transform a human into a one-eyed person. The probability was 1 in 1,000. He had done countless experiments, and in the end, only a few people succeeded. "I will try my best," Jana Mingbo said. "Try your best." Hearing this, Wu Chen's eyes shot out a cold light. With a bang, he kicked Jana Mingbo away. "I can tell you clearly that if you fail, you don't have to continue living." Leaving behind a cold warning, Dustless swaggered off. "Put on." Unexpectedly, just out of the laboratory, he met Takatsuki-sen, who was covered with blood, and fell directly in front of Dustless. "What's the situation?" Dustless stared at Takatsuki-sen with confusion. Takatsuki-sen's enemy was only the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen. According to Sen's strength, it was not a problem to kill the store manager. In the original work, the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen was beaten by several special investigators, and Takatsuki-sen killed those special investigators as soon as she appeared. It was enough to see the huge gap between the strength. Cough, cough, cough. With the support of Dustless, Takatsuki-sen barely stood up and smiled bitterly. "I failed. After you left, I was ambushed by other organizations." Ambushed by other organizations? Dustless frowned deeply, and the first one he thought of was the V organization. The strength of this group of guys was self-evident. It was not a problem to defeat Takatsuki-sen, but according to the situation at that time, the V organization did not need to intervene in the battle between the store manager and Takatsuki-senator. After all, both Sen and the store manager were the enemies of the V organization. Wasn't it better to sit and watch them kill each other? There was no need to meddle in other people's business. Since it was not the V organization, in addition, Dustless could only think of another organization. "Is it the organization called Clown?" Dustless asked Takatsuki-sen curiously. He still remembered that the mask maker was one of the members of the Clown organization. The strength of this organization was also good, and its origin was very mysterious. Chapter 2045. Yes, it's them. Takatsuki-sen's eyes were filled with anger, and she said angrily, "Those bastards plotted against me after you left. Jason and the others were also assassinated, and Tatara and Noroi were also dead, all because of the hateful Clown organization." When talking about the Clown organization, Takatsuki-sen showed her killing intent, and she didn't have a good impression of it. Hearing this, Dustless's performance was mediocre, whether it was Tatara or Noroi, or that Jason. Dustless didn't know them, he just barely spoke a few words. If they died, they died, there was nothing to be sad about. That is to say, Yoshimura Gakusen was rescued by Clown, right? Dustless asked calmly, his eyes were shining with cold light, and he had already sentenced the Clown organization to death in his heart. Everyone didn't interfere with each other's business, but this group of unsightly guys were really clowns. They had to come out to play. Since they wanted to go to the Elysium so much, Dustless had to help them once. "Right, there is another news to tell you." Takatsuki-sen, who was panting, suddenly thought of something. She was very worried. "Originally, I was ambushed by a large group of people of Clown. I almost couldn't support it, but in the end, Arima Kisho suddenly appeared, and other ghouls investigators also appeared, and launched an attack on the people of Clown organization. I had the opportunity to escape. Otherwise, I am afraid that I will really be besieged to death." Takatsuki-sen was still scared. It was not impossible for ants to kill an elephant. "This is interesting." Dustless heard the words and nodded slowly, and immediately said to Takatsuki-sen with his back, "So the secret transaction between you and Arima Kisho in this way, is it successful? After all, CCG has collapsed, and your purpose has been completed." "What did you say? I don't understand." Looking at Dustless's terrible eyes, Takatsuki-sen finally lowered her head without confidence. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled faintly and explained, "Who is the one-eyed king before you? You should know this better than I do, right? Arima Kisho had human blood and ghoul blood, and he was also the old one-eyed king, and he also made some kind of unknown cooperation with Takatsuki-senator. The relationship between the two was not as simple as enemies. Even to some extent, Arima Kisho was Takatsuki-sen's enemy, but he just pretended to be her enemy. How did you know all this? Takatsuki-sen was shocked and speechless. She looked at Dustless with her lips trembling. She was also shocked and could not calm down. How do you know? Dustless couldn't help laughing when he heard the words, and it was rare for him to explain. He said bluntly, Izumi, the purpose of you and Arima Kisho is nothing more than to break the current situation. But now that CCG has been destroyed, what do you think will happen to you and Arima Kisho? Rubbing his chin, Dustless said seriously, "You said that you encountered the group of people from the clown and were in danger. And at this time, Arima Kisho appeared. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence?" Takatsuki-sen was stunned at first, then frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Dustless's speech and behavior revealed a strange feeling. Takatsuki-sen was not intelligent, but she was also quick-witted. She keenly smelled that Dustless's words had other meanings. For example, with a gloomy face, Dustless said coldly, "When the purpose of each other is achieved, it also means that your previous cooperation is over, on the contrary. In other words, since CCG was defeated by me, you and Arima Kisho are already enemies. Do you understand?" "This is impossible." Takatsuki-sen's face suddenly changed. When she was about to say something to fight back against Dustless, a sudden change occurred. Boom boom boom. The huge explosion sound was deafening, followed by the sound of fighting suddenly sounded. "Don't let ghouls go. All ghouls must die. They are not qualified to live in this world." Chaotic noises suddenly resounded, and the violent vibrations made the members of the Aojirai tree confused. How could the base be invaded so suddenly? "It seems that it is the same as what I imagined." Seeing this, Dustless's eyes were cold, and he said coldly, "If I didn't guess wrong, the reason why Arima Kisho let you come back is to use you to find the base of Aojirai tree and then destroy everyone. For him, Aojirai tree is also an enemy. For the New World Order, the existence of Aojirai tree will only cause more uneasiness." How is this possible?" Takatsuki-sen widened her eyes and looked at Dustless suspiciously and said, "Arima Kisho and I are cooperating, he doesn't." "I said before, that was before. You had a common goal before, so naturally you could cooperate, but now this obstacle has disappeared, your cooperation is naturally over." Dustless said, the so-called cooperation was completely nonsense. To put it bluntly, the two sides had common interests to go together. "Damn Arima Kisho, he dares to use me." Looking around and finding a large number of ghouls investigators, Takatsuki-sen's face was pale. Now she could be sure that she was played by Arima Kisho and others. These ghouls investigators were obviously prepared. As Dustless said, the ghouls investigators secretly followed Takatsuki Sr., but these idiots are really not afraid of death. Now CCG has become a street rat that everyone wants to kill. These guys still don't forget to destroy ghouls. They are really dedicated. Dustless's face was full of ridicule. It seemed that he was praising ghouls, but in fact, there was a cold chill behind him. The ground under his feet had clearly visible ice. Chapter 2046. Too hard to break? Dustless's words fell into the ears of Sasaki Hiroshi. His body seemed to be suddenly electrocuted, and the attack that was about to cut Dustless's head suddenly stopped. What does this mean? Sasaki Hiroshi glanced at Dustless, who was smiling evilly, and suddenly felt that Dustless's words had a hidden meaning, especially his obscure eyes, which revealed a hint of other meanings. "Idiot, don't you understand this? Although you have changed your name, your head is still as stupid as before." Dustless pointed to his neck with a contemptuous tone. "Now try to cut it, and you will immediately understand how fragile and powerless you are. You are looking for death." Sasaki Hiroshi was furious when she heard this, and her strength increased by 3 points. The blood-red broadsword that stopped once again broke out a stronger force. In the air, there was a sharp edge that was visible to the naked eye. "Idiot, pay attention, this is not a joke. If your neck is broken, you will die." Seeing that Dustless completely ignored Sasaki Hiroshi, Kaneki Ken, Takatsuki-sen was worried for once and had to remind Dustless to pay attention. She had to understand that the current Sasaki Hiroshi was not the same as the previous Kaneki Ken. He had forgotten the memory of the past and completely regarded himself as a white dove of CCG. For the so-called ghouls, he would never show any mercy. However, the next incredible scene happened. Under everyone's dumbfounded gaze, the deadly broadsword cut Dustless's head. This guy is going to die. Special investigators such as Kuroiwa Iwao and Marutitsuki saw that Dustless was indifferent, and he didn't even look at Sasaki Hiroshi. Everyone was overjoyed. Even if the recovery ability of ghouls was so powerful, if their heads were cut off, they would definitely die. Clang, clang, clang. The blade cut the back of Dustless's head, and there was a clear roar, like the sound of two pieces of steel colliding. The most strange thing was that Dustless's head was like an iron ball, and the moment it was cut, there were bright sparks. Gotcha! Finally, under everyone's surprised gaze, the seemingly strong long sword was broken directly. Are you kidding? How hard is this guy's head? After a few seconds of silence, everyone suddenly burst out, and everyone looked at Dustless in horror. Is this still the head of a ghoul? Is it so hard? Everyone's head was dizzy. They always felt that they were watching a movie, and everything was so ridiculous. Sword, but it is too brittle. Glancing at Sasaki Hiroshi, Dustless said lazily, "Do you understand how fragile you are now? Do you understand the meaning of, too hard makes it easy to break? Because I am harder than you." It was not that Dustless looked down on Sasaki Hiroshi, but this guy was too weak. Even if Arima Kisho had trained him a lot, he was still too weak. This time, I will let you die completely. With a cold look, Wuchen lifted his right foot and covered it with a layer of golden light. Light-speed kick. After about a few seconds of silence, the light on Dustless's right foot whistled out. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Although Sasaki Hiroshi retreated at the first time, compared with the speed of light, his speed was too slow, and he was hit almost instantly. In front of the light, no one was an exception. Boom boom boom. Kaneki Ken's body swept a huge fireball, and the burst of air shattered the glass of the building within 100 meters, and a huge flaming mushroom cloud swept across the void. Dustless didn't show the slightest mercy in this kick, so he must have suffered great damage. Boom boom boom. The hot fireball still continued to burn, and the surrounding temperature increased by hundreds of times. Even the steel was evaporated in an instant, and Kaneki Ken in the center could be imagined. Sasaki Hiroshi. Seeing this, a group of ghouls investigators was heartbroken, and all of them looked at Dustless with anger. Dustless glanced at Marutitsuki and Kuroiwa Iwao, these special investigators, and asked strangely, "Really, when did it start? When a ghoul died, your CCG's white dove is so sad? It's like your brother or sister died." "What do you mean?" Marutitsuki and Kuroiwa Iwao's faces changed slightly, and they couldn't figure out what Dustless was talking about. What an idiot. No, perhaps Arima Kisho is too smart, deceiving you people who have no idea what is going on in your head. Dustless looked at this group of people with contempt, and immediately sneered, "The Sasaki Hiroshi in your mouth is actually a ghoul. His name is Kaneki Ken, but his memory was later taken away by Arima Kisho." Impossible. Marutitsuki and others glared at him. It seemed that they really didn't know the true identity of Sasaki Hiroshi. "Is it? Then you see it clearly." Pointing to the direction of the burning flame, Sasaki Hiroshi gradually revealed her original appearance. Oh. In the fire, there was a very terrible and depressed roar, full of endless bloody smell. Is it really a ghoul? A group of ghouls investigators was shocked. They fought with ghouls all year round, and they even said that as long as the other party was a ghoul, they could smell the difference. This heart-wrenching scream was definitely a ghoul. Why did Arima Kisho deceive us? Several ghouls investigators glared at him, and their fists were clenched. The feeling of being deceived by their own people was really uncomfortable. Chapter 2047. Why did I deceive you? Haven't you figured it out yet? Dustless looked at them with contempt. The heads of this group of CC were slow as if they were rusty. Arima Kisho tricked this group of people to sell them, and they were probably stupid enough to count money for Arima Kisho. It could also be seen from this that this group of people respected Arima Kisho very much. Ouch! The roar that was no less than the screams of ghosts came out from Kaneki Ken's mouth, Everyone was shocked and looked at Kaneki Ken in panic. They saw that behind his back, a large number of thick Kagun emerged, and his appearance was terrible, densely covering all parts of his body. This is... Dustless narrowed his eyes when he saw this, and said in surprise, "Is he going to transform into Kakuja? This kid is amazing. He was kicked at the speed of light and didn't die, but he can transform into Kakuja. It's a miracle. Is this the so-called extreme things will go in the opposite direction?" In fact, it was worth mentioning that Dustless's kick just now caused a fatal injury to Kaneki Ken, but the physique of ghouls was different from ordinary people, and the recovery power was really good, especially Kaneki Ken recovered. But his eyes narrowed slightly, and the chakra in Dustless's body surged again. "You are still alive. You can only continue to suffer." Why did Kaneki Ken suddenly change back to a ghoul? Dustless did not know the specific reason. He just temporarily lost his memory, which led to being tricked by Arima Kisho to become a CCG. Perhaps because of Dustless's kick, Kaneki Ken once again regained his memory of the past. Some people were born to be the kind of people who were favored by God, and their luck was too good. However, even if Kaneki Ken's whole body transformed into Kakuja, what can this change? It didn't have the slightest effect at all. His rapid recovery will only continue to ask for trouble. Laser. The straight light whistled out and went straight to Kaneki Ken, who had transformed into Kakuja. He just roared twice very hoarsely. After realizing the danger, he stared at Dustless fiercely and moved away. He looked very unwilling. Boom boom boom. Flash's attack missed, and the place where Kaneki Ken was standing before was chiseled into a huge pit, and the scorched black hole was clearly visible. Is this guy really a ghoul? The rest of the ghoul investigators couldn't help but be stunned, and then they all stared at Dustless speechlessly and fearfully. A ghoul that can use light beams? Such a heaven-defying existence was not something that ordinary humans could contend against. Even Arima might not be able to defeat this guy. All the special investigators nodded affirmatively in their hearts. Everyone immediately looked at each other and could see the anger in each other's eyes. Arima Kisho was not Dustless's opponent, so sending this group of investigators, isn't it looking for death? Obviously, Arima Kisho deliberately pushed them into the fire pit. Oh! Kaneki Ken's throat emitted a few more sharp screeches. Immediately after, a large number of red Kagun rushed out from his back and bit down like pythons. Of course, Dustless would not resign himself to his fate. His eyes widened, and he immediately launched a fierce counterattack. Tensho! Boom boom boom. The dark evil fire burned from the Kagun without warning, and quickly swallowed Kaneki Ken's Kagun, and it was about to swallow him. Being burned by Tensho. Kaneki Ken screamed in pain, and then saw the flame that was about to affect him, and a strong sense of determination flashed in his eyes. Pucci! With a wave of his hand, Kaneki Ken decisively tore the Kagun on his back to avoid being pulled into the nightmare by Tensho. Grew! Then just a little bit of force, the broken Kagun on Kaneki Ken's back once again erupted the red monster worms, like a tail, and recovered. Haha! The sound of grinding teeth came from Kaneki Ken's ugly external analysis. He seemed to be laughing. Idiot who doesn't know what's good for him. Seeing this, Dustless just shook his head and sighed softly. Immediately, the void on the right-hand side suddenly rippled, and then the long sword with a red handle shot out from it. At the moment when the Tachi appeared, the air quickly heated up, and the ground was strangely dry, and shocking cracks flashed, like a dry land without rain for many years, and there were spider web-like cracks everywhere, enough to fit a human arm. Give you a luxurious funeral, it's a great honor for you to die under this move. Dustless chuckled and raised the long sword in his hand, and then whispered, Bankai Zenka Fire Tachi. Buzz buzz buzz. After the Bankai, the water in the air accelerated the evaporation, and the surrounding vegetation and the blood in the corpse were all evaporated in an instant. Ouch! Kaneki Ken was obviously aware of the danger, and his body suddenly burst out with amazing power, and swooped down desperately. Phew! A huge shadow whizzed over, and human eyes couldn't keep up with such a fast speed, and they could only see a fleeting black shadow quickly passing by. Come on! Dustless raised the blade indifferently, and then after aiming at Kaneki Ken's body, the charred Zanka fire Tachi suddenly swung down, and a ray of destructive edge appeared at the front. Zanka fire Tachi, north ashes of heaven and earth. The huge blade was terrible as if it could destroy the world, and the void along the way melted, and unknown liquid inexplicably slid down, as if the sky was crying, and the scene was extremely horrifying. The super slash of 15 million degrees could destroy everything it touched, and even the supreme sky was no exception. Puff! The edge finally hit Kaneki Ken, and after a slight tremor, his hard body was torn apart. The blade didn't even explode, and directly obliterated Kaneki Ken. The huge body evaporated in an instant, turning into nothingness and disappearing without a trace. Chapter 2048. Such a powerful strength shocked everyone, whether it was Takatsuki-sen or those special ghouls investigators. They were all staring at Dustless. It was not that they were narrow-minded and had not seen the world, but the strength that Dustless showed really refreshed everyone's understanding. Next, Wu Chen's casual sight swept across the several special investigators one by one. Wu Chen's light tone, however, made everyone's spirit shake. Do you think we are stupid? If we go one by one, won't we be defeated by you one by one? Maruditsuki said with a sneer. Didn't Dustless underestimate their IQ? Those self-righteous stupid things. After hearing the words, Dustless couldn't help but laugh and said sarcastically, Funny, do you think you can defeat me together? The reason why I let you go one by one is to give you time to remember the past. Isn't it too ruthless to kill you all at once? Really, why do you bunch of white pigeons always think so badly of others? Bastard, let's go together. Kuroiwa Iwao was too lazy to continue the nonsense. He waved his hand, and several ghouls investigators flocked to him. You have a lot of courage. Dustless smiled and said nothing. He sighed that they were brainless. He was still holding Zanka no Tachi in his hand. This group of so-called ghouls investigators dared to confront him directly, especially in close combat. Isn't this looking for death? If they were touched by the edge of Zanka no Tachi, they would be exactly like Kaneki Ken just now. Even their bodies would be swept away and evaporated. Attack him from different directions, avoid fighting with him directly. Kuroiwa Iwao looked at Dustless solemnly and greeted the rest of the investigators. A group of people nodded and surrounded Dustless from different directions. Before that, I have a question to ask you. After sorting out his thoughts, Dustless asked, You clearly know that you are used by Arima Kisho, you are just pure cannon fodder, why do you not hesitate to lose your life to fight with me? How about this, I will take you back, and you will go and kill Arima Kisho. Dustless smiled and said, The essence of that guy has always been a ghoul, but he hid in CCG and became a special investigator. Isn't this the biggest stain of your CCG? It won't be too late to kill Arima after I kill you. Maruditsuki waved his hand, and several special investigators surrounded from all directions. Phew! When he saw this, Dustless naturally wouldn't wait helplessly for death. Immediately, his eyes turned slightly and surging eye power instantly erupted. Shinra Tensei. Energy ripples visible to the naked eye erupted, and the tyrannical repulsive force instantly flattened the ground that Dustless was standing on. This guy sure has a lot of strange abilities. Hei Panyen looked at Dustless apprehensively. Seeing that Dustless's back was facing him, he quickly ran away. Shoo shoo shoo. Even if he was wearing a heavy armor, he couldn't stop the speed of Hei Panyen. In an instant, he was close to Dustless's back, and the shining sawtooth conch was like a shark's fangs. It had already slashed to Dustless's head. Puchi. In a flash, Dustless's whole body was split into two halves in an instant. Even because the strength was too strong, the powerful force even cracked the ground with a few meters-long cracks. Finally died, this devil. Seeing Dustless's body, Hei Panyen was ecstatic and excited. The existence of Dustless had always been a huge pressure for their CCG. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, behind He Pan Yan's back, there was a sudden cold wind. Even if he was wearing armor, the evil wind still passed through the defense of the armor and blew over his whole body. Behind, Yen, Maruditsuki quickly shouted in panic. He was terrified to find that a black shadow whose speed was comparable to lightning was holding a hot sword to He Pan Yen. So fast. He Pan Yen shivered and turned his head to look. The black shadow that came into his eyes crossed layers of space, like a space jump. It was clearly a distance of dozens of meters, but it was just a moment. The cold sword had already been in the sky and slashed to his head. Who the hell is it? He Pan Yen opened his eyes focused on the black shadow, trying to identify its appearance. Pucci. The ideal was always beautiful, but the reality was extremely cruel. The falling sword drove straight in, and He Pan Yan's body was split into two halves in an instant. He didn't even see who it was. Boom. Then, the dark red sword, the body of the sword broke out a dangerous aura, the light wave of destruction burst out, the hot bursting flames swept out from the sword body, and He Pan Yan's body was evaporated into ashes. The heavy armor on his body also disappeared in an instant. Yen. His close friend was killed, Maruditsuki was heartbroken, and his eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the initiator of the evil, and the black shadow gradually showed a young appearance. The messy black short hair was dancing in the wind like weeds, and there was an evil smile at the corner of the mouth. The slightly squinted eyes always had a cynical smile, as if he was mocking the weak and fragile world, giving people a feeling of endless contempt. Aren't you dead? Maruditsuki was shocked, and his mouth was big enough to stuff a person's fist. Who was this person if not Dustless? But the strange thing was that he just saw Dustless was dismembered, and his body was still lying there. Hearing this, Dustless disdainfully curled his lips, and then showed a kind expression. I respect the old very much. He Pan Yen wants to kill me so much, I will let him kill me once. Otherwise, it won't be good if he still remembers me in heaven. Boom. As Dustless's voice fell, the body just now turned into a piece of wood. Of course, he killed me, it was just a simple clone technique. Chapter 2049. Maruditsuki looked at this scene with astonishment, and his heart was extremely sad for a moment. Was this a battle? According to Maruditsuki's experience of fighting for many years, this was not a battle, but a one-sided massacre. CCG was killed by Dustless, and they had no strength to fight back. The so-called special investigator was not worth mentioning at all in front of this man. It was hard for him to be elegant. There was nothing worthy of Wu Chen's attention. Izumi, looking at Takatsuki-sen, Dustless pointed to the group of corpses again. The meaning was self-evident. Takatsuki-sen saw the situation and showed gratitude, and immediately dragged her tired body slowly to the corpses of several special investigators. It seemed that she wanted to eat them. Stop! Seeing this, Maruditsuki's eyes were about to explode. He naturally understood what Takatsuki-sen wanted to do. You are overestimating yourself. Izumi just glanced at him coldly, and immediately continued to walk to the corpses of several ghouls investigators. She didn't need to care about it. Everything was handed over to Dustless. I asked you to stop. Seeing that Takatsuki-sen ignored his warning, Maruditsuki, who was full of anger, swooped down. Kunk, who was raised high, was about to penetrate Takatsuki-sen's body. Shoo shoo shoo. At the same time, Dustless's feet gently stepped on the ground, and his body suddenly disappeared like a ghost. Go to hell! Maruditsuki held the big sword with both hands. At the moment when it was about to be cut, a figure stood in front of him indifferently. The damn person is you. When the voice fell, the sword in the hand of the figure swept out. The hot edge was unstoppable. Pucci! The blade that was cut to Takatsuki-sen was cut off by the flame. The invincible Kunk was destroyed by the overwhelming power. Damn it! Maruditsuki's old face twitched a few times. He had no choice but to retreat urgently. You offended the god of death. Can you still live? The cold tone sounded behind him. Maruditsuki looked back with a bitter smile and saw Dustless with a cold face. He asked speechlessly, "Tell me, who are you? No, or is it human or ghoul?" For a long time, Maruditsuki had not figured out the racial problem of Dustless. This guy was too evil. No matter if it was a human or a ghoul, there was no such powerful ability. What race? It's not important. Dustless muttered to himself as he swung his Zenka no Tachi horizontally. Puchi! The blade cut through Maruditsuki's body. Even if there was an armor defense, it didn't work. At the moment when the two touched, the deadly Zenka no Tachi tore it like paper scraps. In front of Zenka Fire Tachi, everything was weak and powerless under the extreme temperature of 15 million degrees. Boom boom boom. At the moment when Maruditsuki's body was cut, Zenka no Tachi was the same as before, erupting a large number of bursting flames, erasing the whole person without a trace. Is the racial boundary really so important? You call me a human, I also accept it if you call me a ghoul, but you CCG did the wrong thing, that is standing on the opposite side of me. Dustless looked at the sky indifferently and muttered to himself. Really, you even destroyed the delicious food. Takatsuki-san looked at Dustless with resentment. She seemed to be extremely dissatisfied. After hearing the words, Dustless just glanced at Takatsuki-san faintly and immediately passed by her. Shoo shoo shoo. It was also at this moment that a biting cold attack arrived as expected. Looking up, countless bone-like sharp blades whistled through the air in a manner that could topple mountains and overturn seas. This battle is really scary. Although his words were frightening, Wu-chin remained calm and collected on the surface. His eyes that were as calm as an ancient well were filled with calmness and composure. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The sharp blades cut through Dustless's body, making his whole body full of holes. But it was worth mentioning that in the next second, the wounds were dazzling light, and then they recovered as before. Such an ordinary attack could be repaired by glinting fruit. Is it you? Dustless stared at this person. He was exactly the same as other CCG members, and he also wore the same uniform, but it was worth mentioning that this person had an eye. Who is this? At the same time, Takatsuki-san also found the appearance of this person. Seeing the evil face, her face suddenly tightened. From this person, Takatsuki-san unexpectedly felt a deadly pressure. Otoku Urfu? Are you finally willing to come out to die? Dustless sneered. Although he could crush the SSS-class ghouls, this did not mean anything. In the original book, Takatsuki-san was crushed by Otoku Urfu. Although the former was an SSS-class ghoul, it was still difficult to escape misfortune when encountering Otoku Urfu. And it was worth mentioning that the identity of this Otoku Urfu was extremely complicated. He was not only a member of the V organization, but also a member of the Clown. In addition, he was also an investigator of CCG and had an inextricable relationship with Aojirai Tree. Chapter 2050. And the identity of Urfu was extremely special. He was exactly the same as Arima Kisho, with the blood of humans and ghouls in his body. He was half human. However, compared with Arima Kisho, Urfu's advantages were more obvious and outstanding. He was almost the same as Kaneki Ken. He was a one-eyed ghoul transformed by Kaneki Ken. He was extremely strong and could use Kagun. His strength was not weaker than Arima Kisho. Aya, you actually know me? Urfu squinted his eyes and put the briefcase in his hand on the ground. His smiling appearance looked very frivolous and casual, but his heart was shocked. What is the origin of this guy? Urfu was puzzled. Whether it was inside the V organization, the Clown organization, or CCG, his performance was extremely low-key and he rarely showed off. Therefore, most people regarded Urfu as a small person who could not make waves. In fact, this guy was just a ferocious tiger with a weak appearance. I don't just know you. Dustless stared at Urfu faintly, and there was endless contempt in his words. I also know what your future is, and it is 100% accurate, and I never charge money for fortune-telling. Does that so? That's really something to look forward to. Tell me about it. Old Duo Erfu's interest was inevitably piqued, and his face was filled with curiosity. It's very simple. The ethereal and indifferent tone fell, Dustless's whole body was covered with a bright streamer, and he rushed straight over. What awaits you in the future is simply a path to death. The tone full of strong killing intent spread across the vast sky, containing some kind of mysterious power, and did not dissipate for a long time. Erfu was extremely shocked. Where is that guy? So fast? Erfu looked around. He did not expect Dustless to be so powerful. In a flash, the whole person's breath disappeared. This speed refreshed Erfu's previous cognition. Compared with Dustless, Taketsuki-san, who was also an SSS class ghoul, was as slow as a turtle. Phew. At the same time, on the right side of his cheek, there was a sudden dangerous movement, and the dazzling golden light made Erfu close his eyes. So fast. Enduring the discomfort in his eyes, Old Duo Erfu abruptly turned his head to look straight ahead. What entered his eyes was the whistling golden blade. Without even thinking, the strength in his body erupted to the limit in an instant. His feet stepped on the ground, and he quickly retreated. Kakaka. Due to Old Duo Erfu's strength, the ground beneath his feet instantly crumbled and turned into powder. Swish. Swish. Seeing that the materialized light sword was about to pierce through Old Duo Erfu's body turned into a stream of light and retreated, dodging the incoming light in a flash. Oh, your speed is quite fast. So far, you are the strongest ghoul I have ever seen. Dustless looked at Old Duo Erfu with appreciation and gave a thumbs up. It had to be said that Old Duo Erfu was really different from other ghouls. There was a huge gap. Not to mention the strength, just in terms of senses, this guy was far stronger than the ordinary ghouls. Who the hell is this kid? His speed is ridiculously fast. Dustless's indifference fell into the eyes of Old Duo Erfu, but it was a naked contempt and disdain. Suddenly he felt that his face was cold, and his vision was blurred. Old Duo Erfu subconsciously reached out and touched it. Blood? Looking at the blood stains in his hand, Old Duo Erfu's sight was a little dazed for a while, and his thoughts could not help but solidify a few times. If he remembered correctly, in the past 10 years, it was the first time that he had been cut and bled. You deserve to die. Suddenly, that handsome face that could be considered calm suddenly became as terrifying as an evil spirit. Old Duo Erfu's ferocious nature erupted. His entire person was like a hungry tiger, and there was even saliva dripping from his mouth. Poochie. The clothes on the back of Old Duo Erfu were all destroyed and collapsed in an instant. The dark red Kagun danced strangely, and the majestic killing intent came like a storm. Why is this bastard so strong? Takatsuki-sen's eyes widened. She didn't understand what Dustless felt, but Taisuki-sen felt an unprecedented sense of insignificance from the momentum of Old Duo Erfu. Kagaku of Kamishiro Ryo? Dustless narrowed his eyes and stared at the Kagun that was more than 10 meters thick, and his cheeks were not moved. Go to hell. With a roar, the dense Kagun on the back of Old Duo Erfu became crazily bigger. As if it had taken hormones, it became as thick as a person in just a few seconds, and all of them were like cannonballs roaring. Seeing this, Dustless naturally would not give in. A large amount of light suddenly condensed in the palm of his hand, flashing a dangerous halo. Yasukani no Magatama. Dense flashes of light emerged from his hands, almost filling the entire sky, as many as locusts. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The oncoming thick Kagun was immediately hit by a fatal blow, and it was hit by a hole. The burning light penetrated all the Kagun and turned it into a sieve. Not only that, after the dense light bullets crushed the Kagun, they still rushed to Old Duo Erfu without reducing their momentum. Damn guy, I have never heard of ghouls using this trick. Old Duo Erfu screamed in horror, and immediately a large number of Kagun swept from his back again, wrapping his whole body. So many light eggs had no place to hide. In this case, he could only strengthen his own defense. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.